All right, welcome everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order for the Corporation of the Township of Westland on November 20th, 2024. And we'll start with roll call. Councilor Hurst.
Present.
Councilor Goya.
Present.
Mr. Spillis.
Here.
And Councilor Bailey.
Here.
Excellent. So start our moment of reflection. That concludes our moment of reflection. Ms. Whitefox, you have a resolution for confirmation of the agenda, please.
The council approves the November 20th, 2024 agenda and addendums as circulated. And that council approves the addition to the agenda as follows: consent item 6.1.3, questions received from council seeking additional information and the corresponding responses provided by staff.
You going to move back, Councilor Hurst, Councilor Spillis, any questions or comments on that? All in favor? It's carried. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest today?
Yes, I do. I do. Okay, for item 9.3.3, which is report ADM 2024-057 aggregate compliance report. And this relates specifically to Schedule Q and Schedule E. These are licenses held by a family member and therefore conflict of interest in any decisions as it relates to those schedules.
Okay, Ms. Whitefox, can we remove Schedule Q and V from that report and we'll deal with them separately? Okay. Right, any other disclosures? Okay, thank you, Councilor Greta. I believe we're going to move on to Rania as our first presenter. Welcome, come on down. Watch Price is Right as a kid by any chance?
A little
Does that bring you back?
Yeah.
Nice to see you again.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So this is just a report on the Township of West Lynch's emergency management program for 2024 and how the township has met all the requirements set out in the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act and Regulation 380-04. So the program committee component, we met on February 26th, 2024. To review the township's emergency management program that included the hazard identification and risk assessment, emergency response plan, training needs, pros annual exercise and public education. The minutes were attached from the committee. The emergency response plan, so that was adopted by council in the fall of 2020. In terms of training, the prescribed training hasn't changed from the guidance note from the province from 2018. However, of note, we added the EM 240 course, which is a note-taking course this year. That's a half-day course that just provides a little bit more guidance in improving our documentation piece during an emergency. In terms of the annual emergency management exercise that occurred on October 1st, it was based on a tornado scenario, but mostly it was focused on setting up the EOC. How do you actually physically set that up? So some of the recommendations and outcomes out of that were that we'll move forward with 2 landlines that are in the EOC. This was something that actually came out of a 2019 exercise when the township moved to VoIP phones. There used to be 4 landlines, but now there's 2 here in the primary EOC. So we just decided we'll move forward with the 2. That's okay. We'll just make sure that our EOC procedures were updated. So I think that was the issues that they weren't updated in 2019. So we kind of lost the thread on that. So we'll make sure that's updated now. And then there was the EOC supplies are kept in a closet with a code. Not all MECG members have this code. So we're just going to work with the MECG to kind of figure out what works best, whether sharing it or putting it somewhere else. And then the MECG requested that an FAQ be included with the EOC supplies, just to make it a little bit easier in terms of setup with any of the kind of issues we ran into as we set that up. So we'll be adding that in 2025. And then plans and procedures updates. So there was discussion regarding primary and alternate MECG members checking in with each other in terms of vacations, working to avoid being away at the same time wherever possible. But if it can't be avoided, that the EM team should be advised just so we know what's going on if anything happens. Additionally, it was requested that the emergency management team create packages per incident management system IMS position with step-by-step instructions, because the EOC procedures are pretty long, so we're going to be working on creating that through 2025. And lastly, the township social media contact information will be shared with the county communications manager as a backup if we run into any issues. In terms of public education, the team attended 27 public education events across the whole county, up by 8 from last year. Of note, in the township, we attended the Family Day Winter Classic, the Aberfoyle Agricultural Society Fall Fair, and the Postage Community Showcase. We continued with our regular Wellington Advertiser social media radio ads throughout the year using the Do One Thing campaign, and then amp those up during Emergency Preparedness Week as well. In terms of critical infrastructure, we have a common operating picture map, so we are working to deal with all the issues we were having with it, hoping to be completed by mid-2025, if not sooner, and then get training on that for our team so we can use it. And then lastly, the COVID-19 final after action report has been completed, so it was basically found that the response was very well done. Coordination, collaboration, and decision-making were critical to a successful response. All the municipalities felt that they came out of the pandemic more flexible, adaptable, and prepared for future emergencies. While there were some issues with some existing plans that need to be more updated, they were still supported the response. And overall, it was felt that the effective leadership, clear definition of roles, good communication, and flexibility and adaptability of all involved resulted in a successful response. So in conclusion, the township has met all the mandatory municipal requirements set out in the Act and regulation for 2024.
Awesome, thank you, Ronnie. And you and your team do a wonderful job. It comes off the tongue pretty easy there, but I'm sure it's a lot of work corralling everybody and scheduling and putting the exercise together. It's always a learning experience for myself, and hopefully we never have to put it into place. But it's always great to be prepared and get a good handle on it, so I appreciate it. All right, Councilor Hurst, anything?
Yeah, thanks. Just two really very brief questions. We've seen a lot of road construction this past year and into 2025. And I'm curious if you can speak to how that's impacted the emergency management plan and how it's evolved and into the future. And the second one is interesting to see that a tornado was the emergency crisis that you ran the protocol on. Any thoughts on what your 2025 emergency may be and how you come upon that through like a priority ranking process of most likely to occur type of thing? If you can just maybe speak to those, that'd be helpful.
So you, Mayor. So the first question, our emergency response plan is an all hazards approach. So it never really gets into specifics in terms of like construction or that kind of thing. I am on the listserv though for all the construction, so I get emails with updates of those and what's going to be closed. So I know that I think it's this weekend they're going to close the Hanlon for a bit. So I get those updates. So I have them and I share them with my team. But it would probably be prudent to share those with our local municipalities as well if they don't necessarily have them. So that's something we can look into doing. In terms of next year's exercise, so we're going to focus on testing out our new software. It's a virtual software, so that's going to be a big part of it. But the way that we decide what sort of hazard we're going to do for the exercise is based on our hazard identification and risk assessment. So we have a whole list. So we'll see sort of which ones we've done in the past or recently, or which ones are higher up that maybe we need to test out.
Jamie's not used to being on virtual.
Yeah, and for me, I'm concerned about flooding, so that might be something we look at, but we'll look at the program committee meeting in early 2025 and see where folks are thinking about.
Thank you.
Councilor Godet?
Yeah, thanks. I just some feedback. I thought that the emergency exercise that we did was really valuable in the sense that it was physically here in person in council chambers, which at least not that I can recall, I don't think that we've been able to do that since before COVID. So that was good just to have that sort of like in-person setup. And then also, as you mentioned, putting together sort of like defined roles, like cheat sheets almost for defined roles. I think that's really helpful because just when we did that exercise, it's like, it was kind of like, okay, who does what again, and trying to refamiliarize with ourselves with that is really valuable because it's not something we're doing every day and thinking about all the time. So, you know, it's important that we did that exercise so that, you know, heaven forbid an event does happen, that we know how to set it up and what to be doing. So I felt that the exercise went really well and there was good discussion from that. So thank you for organizing that, your whole team.
Thank you so much.
So thank you for coming by and sitting in the hot seat for us. With respect to the hurricane scenario you undertook, did you consider the loss of the telephone service at all during the as part of the activity? And if so, what sort of backup did you have?
Trying to remember, I can't quite remember the details. I think at some point we may or may not have included losing cell service, but we do have radios in all the EOCs. We have one radio in each, the primary and the alternate EOCs, and then we, as the emergency management team, have like our own plus spares. So that is something that we have set up. We did end up talking with the fire chief about that radio and the fact that all their radios now have the EM1 channel as well. So that was pushed out across the countywide to all fire departments as well. So we did talk about that, and we did figure out how to find it because it is a little bit confusing in terms of getting to that channel because it's not on the normal channels they use, but we did touch base about that. So that's sort of our backup in terms of losing communication.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Bailey?
Thank you. Thanks for coming today. When Councilor Hirsch mentioned your priorities, kind of what's coming ahead.
Yes.
Is there a correlation, or do you kind of tap into any of the conservation, like climate change, reports or anything that's coming forward, and how does that work with your priorities?
Yeah, so we're required to review the hazard identification risk assessment, the HIRA, every year, but then I've set up like a 5-year program where we do a full scale review of each of the member municipalities, like we do 2, each year. And we do like a more fulsome review. So we actually like meet with the conservation authorities, look at the reports, meet with public health, just to make it a little bit more fulsome, just because we have 8 that we do. It's hard to do that for every single one every year. So we do like we still review them all, but then we do a more full scale one based on that 5-year plan. So I don't remember where Quistledge fell, but I can find that
Yeah,
information.
no, I think that's great to hear that you're collaborating with the different conservation.
Oh,
authorities
definitely.
and- Yeah.
Yes.
there you go. Okay, just my last comment was I actually met this morning with Safe Communities, and Christine's going to be updating the safety and well-being plan, and we talked about highlighting some of the really great things that are happening within the county.
Mhm.
So it would be great if you could highlight some of the, like all the things you attended this year and some of the great work that you're doing. It'd be nice to highlight that in the plan that's
Okay.
coming up in the new year.
Sure, yeah, actually, sorry, through you, Mayor, one of my staff, our emergency management assistant, actually sits on the Safe Communities
Yeah.
board. So yeah, I'll make sure to connect.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be great.
thank you.
All right, do you have a recommendation?
That report ADM 2024-059 entitled the 2024 Township of Plunge Emergency Management Program Annual Report be received for information, and that the Council of the Township of Plunge accept the annual report of the Township's Emergency Management Program for 2024.
Can you move it, please? Councilor Hurst, Councilor Bailey, all in favor? Carried. All right, thank you, Ronnie.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy the rest of your day. All right, next item, we're going to invite Michael Hirschenko. Oh, he's online. Let's bring him over. Be big.
Yeah, you hear me?
Welcome, floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Michael Hrishenko. I'm representing the company that is planning to develop a solar farm in the Paslinch area. Actually, the actual address is 3972 Side Road 20 South. And that farm is actually 2.5 megawatt AC, which is planned to be connected to Hydro One network. And the connection point just adjacent to the site, just across the road. So I guess I shared the preliminary plan with you, and this development is under the LT2 RFP with the ISO. So it's basically ISO program for renewable energy for next years. And the reason of my presence here today with this panel is to request the township support letter that is mandatory from the ISO, and it's non-obligation letter for the farm development. Probably worth to mention that we already started to work with planning team, Paslinch planning team, to satisfy all the necessary requirements for the development. And once the planning application is approved, we will be working with building department office to approve building permit as necessary. So this development, we would be targeting probably for the construction phase end of 2025, beginning 2026, depending how the planning application and building permit application will go, and also how the application with ISO for LT2 RFP will go as well. So that's a short brief what we are planning to do. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you.
All right, thank you for your presentation. I recognize that it's an integral part that you have a endorsement from the council for this project. I'm gonna maybe ask staff, when's the appropriate time for council to give endorsement of a project of this nature?
So through Mr. Chair, the township does, of course, follow the planning process under the Planning Act as it relates to development proposals. Typically, township council does not weigh in on support or sort of dissent of any Planning Act application until the developer has fulfilled the public consultation and the technical review process as part of the planning process. And that's because at this point, we don't know if this is a good land use planning. We don't have that information for council. So it is not typical for council to sort of weigh in on applications at this very preliminary stage. I do understand this is a different type of development proposal. We haven't seen this before in the township, and there are other approval processes in place as well, as I understand it, outside of the Planning Act process. However, it's a difficult request for council when the Planning Act process has not been fulfilled.
Okay, thank you, Madam CEO. Okay, council, well, let's hit, you have a recommendation just to receive it for.
This is to, the recommendation right now as it relates to the delegation is to receive it for information.
Okay, council, do you have any questions for the delegate? Councilor Hurst?
Yeah, Michael, maybe just two quick ones. Do you have any examples of other municipalities you've gone through this process with in recent past? Maybe we can better understand something that's ahead of us.
Yes, we had in the past, in the long past, but it was completely different program, right? It was called FIT 1 to FIT 5. Right now, this program is completely different. It's called LT2 RFP, right? And before entering into planning action items, right, and to satisfy Planning Act, we have to submit to ISO along with our financial proposal, letter of support from every single municipality where we are planning to develop solar farm. It's a newer process for all of us, right? It's new process for us as developers, system owners, and operators. I think it's the new process for all the municipalities that we are working with, and we are developing 7 farms in next like 3 to 4 years. So everyone will be facing the same issue. Without your letter, our application is not going to be fully completed to the ISO. And before we are entering into the action items and completing action items on planning application, the ISO must approve our application from the financial perspective and grant us so-called Energy Power Purchase Agreement, EPPA, right? And after that, we can go to satisfy all the requirements of Planning Act and the building permit requirements as well, right? So it's completely new program. It was just introduced this year by the Ministry of Energy, Ontario Energy Board, and the ISO as the regulator of the energy industry. So to answer your question in a simple words, previously we had that experience, but it was completely different program before their Prime Minister Ford, right? It was called FIT 1 to FIT 5. When Mr. Ford came to the power, he canceled those programs. And just this year, we restarted the renewable energy in the province of Ontario under the new initiative.
Okay, thanks, Michael. That adds some good context for me. I'm just curious where we are in the spectrum of early versus mid-level adoption. So that's good. I'll leave it to staff to kind of work through the planning process, and yeah, look forward to hearing more about this when details are a bit more concrete. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation. I don't have any questions. I'm sort of going with what staff is saying here to go through the Planning Act application the way we would normally do. So thank you.
Yeah, you have a draft form on here. It's a pretty lengthy form. Is the expectation that the township would be filling out this form?
As far as I remember from all the documents that ISO released to us, to the developers, right? They don't propose any forms. I can double check and double verify that again with the most updated documents that they released maybe yesterday. There is no form per se for this. They're asking the municipalities just to provide the letter that is again non-obligation letter for you. So, but that you will be working with us and support us on the way to complete these projects. And they require that from every single developer in the province of Ontario.
Question of Courtney. Courtney, if we put a statement of support in principle with no guarantee that at the end of the planning process, there's no guarantee that it will work out. Worse, would that be in conflict with what you're suggesting? I just wanted to just basically show we support this project in principle. We still got all these hoops to go through before we finally sign on dotted line. So just to give a initial high-level support in principle, subject to satisfying all the necessary township bylaw and Planning Act requirements, something like that.
Absolutely. My apologies. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Through you, Mr. Chair, I understand the sort of the idea of that kind of a support resolution. There is some concern from a staff perspective around setting precedent for developers. If we are to treat developers sort of consistently, there is a aspect of it is the sort of the cost of doing business for developers across all industries, where you have to work through the proper planning processes, all those processes. There's no guarantee we don't presuppose the outcome of Planning Act process applications, and so we could see, more developers coming in looking for that initial support from council prior to working through their Planning Act applications, which just ultimately puts council in sort of in a spot to be supporting or not supporting applications before they've done their due diligence. So I don't see the concern. It doesn't hold us to anything legally, as it relates to the Planning Act process, but it may just be precedent setting for other developers that are looking for the same sort of support.
Okay, I guess I'm Nicole Andrea. I like the project, but I understand we gotta go through the hoops at the same time. I do not want to start a precedent for developers on the, have an expectation that they're gonna get a lot of support. The fact these are, this is, organization from the province of Ontario as opposed to private developer, would that shed any, positive aspects on you reconsidering that?
So if you're Mr. Chair, we could word the resolution if council is sort of desiring to support this type of development, that it's a general support letter that the township supports developments that are provincially sort of brought forward or through the provincial process that also have clean energy or climate action initiatives behind them. There could be some wording that we could phrase. But again, it may send a message to, on the flip side of that, it may send a message to the residents that would have otherwise been engaged in this application process, that council supporting something without hearing the feedback from the community.
Well, but like, to me, it would be supporting in principle, subject to, the public input and all that good stuff. Like, to me, this is a very high level, but it's, there's a lot of hoops to go through before we sign on the bottom line.
So if you, Mr. Chair, I think that there's two sides to it, and it really is just what council feels comfortable. We have done a pre-consultation process here. I believe it's been one round of pre-consultation with just some initial feedback. Council could request that this applicant, I don't know what the time sensitivity is here, but there could be a second round of pre-consultation that we could request and have a little bit more information about this application, and then have council maybe review that information prior to giving support. It's just at this point, it's at the very preliminary stages.
Okay, so I like your suggestion there, so let you finish up the going around the table, Mr. Mayor, and I'll make a suggestion.
Councilor Wheeler?
Thank you. Yeah, I think I need a little more information on what this project looks like. I'm quite supportive with renewable energy initiatives. I don't know what the land is zoned, if it's prime agricultural or secondary. I presume but this is farmland. I would presume that we're going to be putting solar panels on. So I think I need a little more information about, what the project is, at what expense, and getting some community feedback on do we want Puslinch covered in solar panels? I don't know if that's, the vision of what our community wants. I would like to support renewable, initiatives, but I think I need a little more information on what this involves. My question was, what is the timing here? What is the hope for this project?
For urgency? For urgency?
Yeah, what is the urgency? What is the timing? When are you hoping to have this in place for?
We have to submit our application based on preliminary release data by the ISO by the end of this year. There is a possibility that they might extend the application submission to the early 2025, but I would say it's not highly likely from feelings that we formed based on the ISO meetings. So we think it still will be by the end of this year. So, and they require that letter to be a part of the submission. If you wish, I can share the requirements from them with you, so you can have a look at those requirements. So again, before we jump into we had a pre-planning application meeting. We discussed a lot of things already. Your planning department shared their feedback that they have, and we know what kind of expectations are from planning department. So, but before we dive into satisfying those expectations, whether it's like agricultural assessments, right, environmental assessments, and on and on and on, we must have in hand approval from the ISO and the power purchase agreement release so we can start investing into the development. I guess you mentioned about what is the cost of the development. It's 2.5 megawatt farm. It could be around from $4 to $5 million that we will invest. The location that we have is pretty covered and not visible from the road and not visible from the neighbors because there are tree lines around the site, right? So at the same time, it's a pretty well established technology across energy industry, right? Very clean energy. So if you need any additional information from me at this moment, please let me know and I will gladly share everything that I have and probably the photos from previously built sites that we are maintaining. So that's also not a big deal. So you can see how it's going to look like at the end of the construction.
Yeah, I think I'd like to, you know, like staff was saying, continue on with the proper process and get some of these, you know, environmental assessments and things going before I give some approval.
Okay, I'll ask staff first, when was the first pre-con? What's the date on that or approximation on the exact date? Sorry to drop that.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, it was October 17th of this year.
Okay, so my question to you would be, why so late? If you knew this deadline was coming, because this feels as though it's a under the gun decision and I'm not comfortable making those decisions if you had that. Anyway, actually, I'm not gonna ask that question. I'm just gonna state that to you. So, I have concerns with giving preliminary approval. Putting weight on a provincially monitored, enforced industry is actually a detriment in my mind. We look at the aggregate industry, can't get enforcement from them. We have MECP that in the township has not enforced spills, and to give another industry that has oversight and control by the province is not playing in your favor in my decision-making process. So I definitely need this to go through more work with staff for them to get to a point where they can recommend the preliminary support from council. If that's the one card we hold for this industry, then to give it away early, and my advice to the council here is not advisable. The other thing, this would be a question is, so I'm gonna back up a little bit. I'm getting frustrated with the rural subsidizing the urban centers. So this is going to be a power thing to subsidize the other Ontarians. So if that's the case, what's the benefit to the township? Does this property turn into a industrial power generation and pay additional tax? Does it stay in the farm tax class? And now we've lost, now, I'm looking at the satellite view. I can't tell if it's a hobby farm, if there's crop grown, if it's naturalized. However, it likely is secondary agricultural. We will be taking potential agricultural lands out of production for this. If there's a benefit to the Puslinch taxpayer, maybe it's because it is secondary ag, the yields on it were so low, they stopped farming it, don't know all those things. Maybe we can get behind it. But if this just provides a subsidy to, you know, Ontarians with no net benefit to the township and take out possible future agricultural lands, I have a problem getting behind that. So do you know, does anybody know if there's a tax class for this type of operation, or maybe it's in the report? I didn't get to see the.
No, through you, Mr. Chair, we were looking for some information back and we did receive it, our clerk received it early this morning. So there is a tax class. It looks like it could be industrial or commercial based. If that's what the county has seen in other areas that have.
That's good.
So there's that component. And again, just with this property, it is designated secondary agricultural with an agricultural zoning. So again, you're looking at two types of Planning Act applications. You're looking to amend an official plan and you're also looking to amend the zoning.
Okay, so that, there's at least a benefit to the Postage taxpayer. Now that's a card in my mind that's better for you. However, with giving preliminary approval, I'm not comfortable with that, having all the interactions we have with provincially run components in our township. I think you need to work through the staff. Now, we have the 27th, which is too quick. I believe we have a meeting in December. I don't know if that's possible. Staff are up to their eyeballs in work. But I feel as a developer, there's some risks. You have to pay those costs, those preliminary plans, those preliminary studies, with no guarantee that this is gonna go forward. That's similar to every other developer in the township. So that's kind of where I'm at. Unless I pose some questions to this council, I think Councilor Spools had something you wanted to recommend.
Yeah, I'm gonna suggest that, staff continue to meet with the proponent and, come back, to council, at an opportune time, with a, recommendation whether or not we should, have a, high level, support for this project.
I think that's fair. So that's moved. Okay, a second for that. We'll discuss it. Councilor Hurst. All right, Councilor Hurst.
You know, I'm in support of the Councilor Spools' suggestion. I think, philosophically, I think this is an interesting project. I want to know more about it and let staff have time to digest it and work through the appropriate processes. I know that's probably not the answer you're looking for today, Michael, but I think it's not a no. I think we just need to be very cautious going through this based on what the mayor articulated.
That's good.
Yeah, I'm in support. I do just have a question about something that was said. There was mention about the ISO approval is required before completing a planning application, and I'm just, is that, Courtney, I don't know, or maybe Justine, is that some kind of requirement that our planners are asking for before accepting a planning application? Or is that something that, I guess I'm just wondering, there's this end of the year deadline to have this IESO sort of like endorsement from council, but I'm not quite connecting all the pieces. What affects, what comes first in the process, and maybe that's part of your report back to us, but is it just that it is more likely to be successful if it has the endorsement, or is it a true requirement that cannot be completed before having that endorsement? I'm not sure if you know the answer, or if you can report back on that as part of what Councilor Zapoulis was recommending.
So do you, Mr. Chair, we have some information. I don't think we have a good understanding at this point. I think that we don't, as staff, not having completed this process before, want to know more about whether an endorsement is necessary to submit, whether it's just would make their likelihood of achieving funding more likely if they have the municipal support resolution. We need to understand the process a little bit more. And I think on our side of things, it's really contingent on, is this good land use planning? Like, I think that's where we'll come back to with support. And the sort of, concurrent process that's running, through the IESO, we don't know a lot about. So, I think we do need to learn more about that in order to report back to council.
Yeah.
No, I'm good.
Councilor Bailey.
Yeah, I'm nothing more to add.
Okay, yeah, I think it's important to learn more and just now, this is gonna be on the front burner for them. Staff workload is at, I'm going to say, an all-time high at the moment. How are you gonna manage accommodating. I shouldn't put you on the spot in front of these people, but I don't want them to have an unrealistic.
Mr. Mayor, my motion was that I'll pretend time.
I know, but I'm just asking her so that he can hear what the CEO's thoughts are, right? Because it's gonna be challenging. You got a lot going on, right?
So through Mr. Chair, development applications are proponent driven, and staff, have a great team of consultants, external consultants that help us with them. So, it really is, at the pace at which the developer can get the required information to us for review.
So what was the recommendation?
So you have to receive the delegation, and then the council suggests that the proponent continue to work with staff on this proposal and report back to council at the appropriate time.
We have a mover and a seconder, so any final comments from council? Okay, all in favor of that? Thank you. All right, thank you for your delegation. Appreciate it. Great. I believe next is Mr. Will.
Morning. Um, thanks for the opportunity for allowing to speak on regards to the fire, Cambridge Fire Response Agreement. My name is Roger Will and I reside at 337 Town Line Road, Puslinch, Ontario. A little bit about myself. In 1985, we purchased a farm on Town Line Road. In 1986, I joined the Puslinch Fire Department. In 1994, I was promoted to Fire Prevention Officer. In 1997, I also took on the responsibility of the Chief Training Officer. In the year 2000, I became the first certified firefighter in the county. In 2001, I accepted a position as a full-time firefighter with the City of Vaughan. In 2003, I left the Puslinch Fire Department. In 2019, I retired with 33 years of service. Now, in regards to the response agreement, a little bit of the history of how it came to be. In 1969, Puslinch Township established the Puslinch Fire Department. In 1974, Galt, Preston, and Hespeler incorporated into the City of Cambridge. A short time later, the City of Cambridge advised Puslinch that they could no longer provide fire protection to the area around Puslinch Lake and the area that was then known as RR22 Hespeler. After an investigation, it was found that Puslinch Fire took between 20 and 30 minutes to respond to the area west of the township. The area in question was from Town Line Road to Side Road 10 and from Gore Road to Highway 24. The fire marshal at the time suggested that there may be a need of a second fire station around the Puslinch Lake area. The township conducted a public meeting, a vote was held, the vote passed, and subsequently Puslinch entered into a fire service agreement with the City of Cambridge. In 1997, as the new training officer, I researched public records and available bylaws and agreements. It was at this time I found records of the public meeting and the vote count along with the OFM recommendations. Unfortunately, the township staff could not find the records and suggested that they may be found at the Wellington County Archives. So bringing us up to today, in the last few days, I have done some research and made calls to the OFM and the fire marshal advisor for the area. In regards to fire departments, I was told that there was no mandate for a municipality to have fire suppression. Only public education and fire prevention is required under the Act, Part 2, Municipal Responsibilities. A municipality may provide fire suppression services and other competencies within establishing and regulating bylaw. Competencies such as confined space rescue, trench rescue, structural collapse rescue, water ice rescue, hazardous materials, auto extrication, to name a few. The level of service and type of service is to be included in an establishing and regulating bylaw. Ours is 018-2019. In the establishing bylaw, Article 731, there is reference to NFPA 1720. This indicates the requirement to have a response time of 6 firefighters within 14 minutes, 80% of the time. The fire service agreement, 2.5, service outside municipalities, and 2.6, automatic aid agreement of the Act, as the premises of extending the service agreement. The current agreement fails to provide coverage to the entire area that the fire marshal found to be a serious threat to public safety as per 271 of the Act. I don't know who, what, when, or why the agreement was changed, but removing this area north of the 401 has returned the threat to public safety. Therefore, exercising due diligence, may I suggest that the new fire service agreement be extended to include the area north of the 401, which was previously identified as a threat to public safety. I have already spoken with the City of Cambridge Fire Chief and Mayor's Office, and they said the municipality, Puslinch, only needs to request the extension for it to return. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Roger, for your presentation. You mentioned that the OFM made recommendations. I assume that you had plenty of communication with the OFM on this topic?
Yes,
Yeah, okay. Have they provided that confirmation to you?
it's in the Act.
No. The recommendations, specifically speaking to Puslinch, have they provided you documentation that they made those recommendations?
They did not, but it was on record in the Puslinch public records.
Have you found those? Has anybody been able to confirm that those exist?
Not at this time.
Okay, so though that hasn't been confirmed, okay. And staff, I believe we've searched our records for those.
Right.
And Mr. McNeil, did you have any conversations with, sorry, Chief, I should call you Chief. Did you do any research as to trying to find those recommendations, or I've even seen them labeled as orders?
For you, Mr. Mayor, yes. So Mr. Will talked to Rick Finnemore, who's the field advisor for the OFM. There is nowhere on his record that he could find these orders from the fire marshal. Now, to what Rick said is there has been so many changes, which the big one was the Municipal Act. So a lot of those records are not available. But to his knowledge, there's absolutely no way the fire marshal came in and ordered the town of Puslinch to have a fire service agreement. That's not what it's there for. Council sets the level of service.
Right, so council can opt to enter into service agreements for any component of the township. If we see a concern or a desire to increase service levels, that is open to the entire township for.
For you, Mr.
as an
Mayor?
option.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we can
Okay.
look anywhere in the township to have any type of agreement if we feel the need.
Okay. So just for clarity, your ask is to instate, in other words, expand the service agreement to the northern component of the township, similar to what's already covered by Cambridge.
Yes, so it would be from town line to side road 10, north of 401 to Highway 24.
And what's the premise for that?
It's was identified to be in a 30 minute response time. And in our establishing bylaw, it says 6 firefighters within 14 minutes, 80% of the time. Given the distance, in 20 to 30 minutes, that's not being reached.
Good. Response times, Chief, educate me, please. Response times are from the hall to the call, or is response time, how do we classify response times?
For you, Mr. Mayor, so response times are classed as the time it takes to get from the fire hall to the incident. So, and then there's turnout times and other things that are, but the response times are from the hall to the incident.
Yeah, I have not seen a report that says we're not meeting our deadlines for response. What I have seen response times for is other services that in the northern part of the county, the west part of the county for ambulance. But again, those are, guidelines and
benchmarks to try to achieve to. And that's the service level we set. It doesn't mean that, you know, we could change it. We could change it to, we want to make it 10% of the time. That's the beautiful thing about the council. We get to choose those service levels, and you have to set the benchmark somewhere. I have yet to see any indication that we're not meeting those benchmarks or a concern about that area of the township needing additional service. So, I think those are my comments for now. I will now turn it over to Councilor Hurst.
Thanks, Roger. I appreciate the background information and just the level of detail that you went through is quite good. I mean, my question, the first one is for Chief McNeil. When the township is responding to emergency service calls, is it typical that you would track the timing between just what you just previously articulated, the timing from the station to the incident? Is that something you typically would track on a call by call basis?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to members of council. Yeah, so in our dispatching and our reporting system, times are tracked from the time we leave the hall till we get to the incident. Updates are kept and times are tracked for everything that we're doing in benchmarking while we're at the incident, as down to the point of when we return the trucks to service after the incident is over. So yes, it's all tracked, and quarterly those reports are sent to the Ontario Fire Marshal for them to review.
Okay, thanks. So, and I think it's pretty clear what the ask is from your delegation in terms of exploring I'll say the geographic area north of the 401 within the township on the west side. So maybe my thinking here would be, and I'm very sensitive to dump more work on staff, but I think to me, this is a longer term data-based decision process, and I would encourage staff to review the call history in that region that you noted, Roger, and let's see what the facts are, type of thing. And I think that's probably the starting point from my standpoint. And if it does come to a point where, you know, established service agreements, I guess is the second piece from council to designate what those are, but if they're not being met, then I think that's the appropriate time to have that conversation or to have that exploring it. I think that's kind of where my thoughts are, is like, I appreciate you flagging this. I think one of the challenges is like the lack of documentation on the history of how things have been documented or lack thereof. But yeah, I'd like to see a bit more data from our chief, just to kind of add to the context of this. But I think your positioning is well meant. It's like we want to make sure that our residents in the township are well served. I'm maybe leave it there, but I think this is good context to drive some further conversation and discussion and direction. Thank you.
Councilor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Wolf, for coming today, and thanks for, I can tell it's something that, you know, you have a lot of passion about, and you've been part of it for a long time, so it is valued to have your context and your input on it. I think when I look at it, sort of, I guess, regardless of maybe what took place in, you know, 1974 and what happened along the way to get here, moving forward, you know, what is the best way to provide service throughout the township? And so I'm glad that you clarified your ask, because I wasn't quite sure what it was initially of consideration to add the north side of the township to the fire service agreement. To Councillor Hurst's point, I wouldn't necessarily know the information to be able to make a decision like that right here today. I don't know what the response times are. I don't know what the call volume, the frequency of calls is to that portion of the township. And so I think those are all important pieces of information we need to consider. We are doing a fire master plan in 2025. I don't exactly know if that's something that gets, I don't know if that's something you can answer, Courtney, or the chief. As part of the fire master plan, are we looking at things like response time to various component portions of the township? Are we looking at alternate options other than just service agreements with other municipalities? Are those the kinds of things that we could look forward to seeing in the fire master plan?
So through Mr. Chair, and if our chief has anything to add, yes, exactly that, options for, if there is a change in service level required, there will be options within that fire master plan for council to consider on how to meet that new service level. That would all be a component, and it would be data driven, so driven by the data from our response times and other sort of things that we have that we track. And that fire master plan would then inform our establishing and regulating bylaw, which would be updated after the fire master plan is adopted.
So to your point, I think those are all things that we need to look at, but I think the appropriate time, at least as far as I think, is to do that at the time when we're going through the fire master plan, when there's data to drive those decisions.
Councilor Spills?
Yes, thank you for coming and sharing your concerns. I don't have any specific questions of you, but I do have some questions of staff. One for Chief McNeil. The northwest part of township, how many calls do they get compared to the south of the highway versus north of the highway? And who services those calls north and south of the highway, I should say, in the west part of the township?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and members of council. So the north side of that is serviced by Puslinch Fire. The south side of the agreement will be serviced by Cambridge. I can tell you the call volume is substantially higher in the south versus the north. As per actual calls, I don't have that information right now. I've asked our reporting software people to run a report and get that data for us. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get it ready for this meeting, but I can tell you the calls are substantially higher in the south.
Question of our CEO. The fire master plan, I understand this, how this north area is to be serviced. Would that be part of the assessment as well? And in terms of providing type of service, what type of service we're looking at? One time was consideration of having the fire station out that location, and obviously cost prohibitive, but certainly we have the status quo. We have the new fire station. Is there another option that you're considering that will be addressed as well?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. So in addition to status quo, there's also the opportunity to look at expanding some of our agreements as an option. And finally, there is always the option to look at composite department. So that would be a department that employs volunteers, but also employs full-time firefighters. And the way that can be of assistance, particularly to response time, is you're not, those people are deploying directly from the station versus from their homes or where they're residing when they're being called in. So there's, you know, those types of options that the chief and I will look at when we're doing the fire master plan to see what makes sense, bring back some costing options, get feedback from the community, so council can sort of use all of that data to make their decision.
Okay, it's important that we have a public consultation on this, so I'm able to weigh in on this, whichever way we want to go. No, I'm good. Just last point, I think when you do the analysis, you'll have to look at the costing we're doing. Like, it seems these costs are escalating and escalating. Sometimes there's got to be a break-even point where jumping to another solution makes sense. When we get into $500,000 a year, that's going to be a big ticket item. We may be looking at your hybrid solution might be more cost effective.
Councilor Bailey?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Mr. Will, for coming today. I think it's really important to hear history on topics, and when a lot of us are new on council, it's good to hear that, the history that's come in and put things in perspective. I think this is pretty fascinating and I'm actually looking forward to the data that we can collect to see, sort of response times. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the response times versus distance, are related, because the northwest part of the township isn't the only part that's far from the fire hall. I'm thinking Arkell, for example, is, I don't know if it's as far as, you know, where we're talking, but it would be interesting to see kind of how that data works. I think doing everything during the fire master plan makes sense. We can determine kind of what service level we want to do, but a lot of it's going to depend on budget. Weighing in what can we afford to do versus what we want to do, and then having to come up with that compromise. So, you know, we might not all get what we're looking for, but we'll have to come up with something that makes sense for the township. So, thanks.
May I make a point of clarification?
Sure.
I did not say the OFM ordered a second station. They made a recommendation. And the level of service is in your establishing and regulating bylaw. So that's,
Whether it was ordered or recommended, where is that documentation?
well, you were on the recruit class when I was bringing this stuff up, so.
Well, it's just, you're putting a lot of weight on that recommendation. We've got our chief investigate it. It's all, and we need to see it. But
Well,
at the end of the day, it's fine, Roger. So
okay.
end of the day, council sets the service levels, whether there was a recommendation. So, right now we're supporting that area. So, one thing that, I don't feel is being articulated by yourself in the community is that you're advocating for a tax increase that will be borne by those residents in that area above and beyond the normal tax increases, because when this council, Councillor Bailey joined us, halfway through the first term, but I believe we were absorbing that cost from initially the residents bore that additional cost 100%. This council has been moving towards a goal of 50% absorption by the remainder of the taxpayers in Pusslinch. So that's quite a significant improvement for, you know, your tax bill and your neighbors. If advocating for this expansion in the north needs to be clear to them, there's a real possibility that their taxes are going to go up because they're going to cover 50% of that cost themselves. And the rationale behind that is you in that area and your neighbors are receiving a different service than the remainder of the residents in Pusslinch. So do you feel it's not a question. I don't feel it's fair to the balance of the Pusslinch residents to pay 100% of that cost where you receive different service using different purposely. Because they receive, as Councillor Bailey picked up, we have Arkell, we have Little Road I wrote down. So when the staff do the comparison of response times, let's compare it to other components of the township. Because what the argument is hinged on is we have this section that's receiving different service. And because of their proximity to that different service, now we should expand it. So would the argument say, well, then why doesn't the other 3/4 of the township, but it's cost prohibitive? Rural living comes with rural response times. And that people chose to live down by the lake because it's waterfront property and beautiful properties. And now you get more people, more calls. We've tried to adapt to that. But the reality is rural response is rural response. We're not full-time city fire departments. And we also are in a supportive role to ambulance. Ambulance is responding to the medical emergencies, in my understanding. Initially, first primary response is we're supporting. So we're there to help them. And I don't know if people understand that. There's an ambulance on the way. So I'll ask staff, put me on the spot. The NFPA that gets referenced all the time, maybe Chief McNeil is the better staff. I look at Courtney all the time, but NFPA is mentioned a lot in these. Is that a standard in Ontario? Or is that a guideline? How does NFPA work in Ontario?
So NFPA is a guideline on Ontario. There's no legislative properties behind it. The FPPA is what enforces the fire departments. So NFPA is a best practice in North America. People strive to do it, but you don't have to follow it. It's a guideline.
I want that to be clear, because I also feel that in the public, there's some misunderstanding that that's a standard we have to comply by. It's a guiding document, it's a good guiding document to use. You know, the Americans have put a lot of work in NFPA, there's no doubt about it. For our establishing and regulating bylaw, and we have these response times, if we're not meeting them, we need to discuss it, we need to decide to fix it, to change it, don't know that yet. But as part of the fire master plan, I support looking at our fire service, determining what are the service levels we can provide that's, you know, affordable to our community as a whole. And I look forward to those reports, but to ad hoc this time, I can't support it. I don't feel that the council can, but it sounds as though the master plan is coming back in 2025. Options for fire service, I support looking at, I think there was 3 or 4, even giving council the full cost of any option. Let's see the numbers. We really need to have the public input on this. They really need to know the impact on their tax bill. And, because it's not just simply redrawing a line and everything status quo. That's not the case, right? It's just not.
Well, right now with the new agreement, we're looking at a 48% increase in the cost of the service agreement. So if you're looking at saving money, why not impose the same standard of service to the south as to the north?
You know, it's a much more difficult position to reduce service levels for communities members.
But it was done for the north.
I don't know if that's necessarily true. I don't ever recall that northern part being part of the agreement. So we'll just leave it at that. Go ahead, Councilor.
Can we just have staff clarify what we're sort of locking into with this agreement? It is a 3-year extension of it, but I think there's a caveat in there for.
I'll time you out. I'm gonna ask, we move up the report.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Okay.
Roger's here and we'll deal with that. You can ask that question.
Sure.
Just pen it so you don't forget, please.
Yep.
Let's deal with the delegate. That didn't,
So, through you, Mr. Chair, I have a resolution to receive the delegation and also that council advance agenda item 9.1.1, report FIR 2024-005, directly following the delegation by Mr. Will.
You move that, please. Councilor Spillis, Councilor Hurst, all in favor? It's carried. All right, we'll move on to item.
Second.
What's that? Yeah, you can sit back. You're welcome. Coming forward. Sorry, no one. This wasn't.
Joke about that fire gets 911.
I just picked up on this.
So funny.
All right, Mr. 911. It's your report. Way you go. You're gonna want to stay for this. I don't think you want to leave.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize he was on the agenda.
All right, go ahead, Chief.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, you have the report in front of you. I'm happy to answer any questions, concerns, clarifications you'll have on the report.
All right, thanks, Chief. Do you want to read the recommendations? We get on the report?
Yes, so that report FIR 2024-005 regarding the agreement with the corporation of the city of Cambridge for fire and emergency services be received. And the Pilsen Council agrees to the terms set out in the agreement in accordance with schedules A through C, being the service area map, Cambridge Pilsen Fire Protection Contract Fee for 2025 to 2027, and the proposed agreement with the city of Cambridge for the years 2025 to 2027 respectively. And the council directs staff to prepare a bylaw for enactment once the city of Cambridge Council has agreed to the terms of this agreement through their budget process.
Go ahead, Spillis.
Sure.
All right, questions for the Chief, Councilor Hurst.
Yeah, thanks. And I think there was a lot of clarity provided in the Q&A document. So I think for members of the public, I think that's a really good reference point. I had a couple very, very brief questions. I think that the first one would be is just to make sure I understand the cost to the residents in the I'll say the zone. My understanding is the aspiration is 50% of the total cost is covered by the township's operating budget and 50% is then directly allocated to those particular residents in that zone as a line in their tax bill. Am I understanding that correctly as a resident that doesn't live in that zone? So I don't see the tax bill, but that's how the process works. Am I understanding that correctly?
So through Mr. Chair, it's not quite yet 50%. So as council directed staff, we're working towards that 50%. But yes, there is a specific amount added to the properties that benefit from the service agreement.
Right, our aspiration is to get to 50%, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I think that's helpful. And I think the other one that I think came up in the Q&A, just in as we overlay this with our 2025 fire master plan, this is a 3-year agreement, but as I understand it, with 180 days notice, this agreement can be either terminated or modified based on, direction as part of the 2025 fire master plan. My understanding, just the sinking and the strategy towards that can be clarified.
Yes. Through you, Mr. Chair, the agreement does have a termination clause for both, that applies to both the city and the township. So it does have that 180 days or 6 months notice. Again, that's appropriate, given the termination of the agreement would put sort of undue burden on either municipality, both for budgeting purposes, but for planning. So there is a longer termination clause there, and it is beneficial to have the 3-year term to give the township the space and the appropriate time to be able to look at our fire master plan. And if there's changes to service levels, have the appropriate time to roll that out. It could be a large undertaking based on whatever the recommendations are.
Thanks. I think I'll leave it to Councilor Bailey to ask her question, because I thought that was a really good one. And maybe the last one from my standpoint would be, and this is maybe an overlay of a question that occurred to me during Mr. Will's delegation, but presumably Chief McNeil, the information from Cambridge Fire Service in terms of the level of service and the time from their fire station to any calls within that zone, that would be documented information that we could access, presumably as part of our larger study of understanding service levels. Is that a reasonable assumption to make?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Yeah, so Cambridge will supply us with a report at the end of each year with the amount of incidences they run, with all their response times and data that we can use.
Thanks. I think I'll stop there. I'll let others ask.
Councilor Gordon?
Yeah, I had just two questions about more of how the costs get calculated. I'm not sure, perhaps Courtney, you could answer that, but in the calculations that are provided in the report and also in our Q&A, there's a per capita rate established by the Cambridge Fire Department, and then it's sort of multiplied by the population in Coast of that sort of dedicated area. And I'm just wondering, how does that population, where does that number come from in terms of the population of the specific area that's covered?
So through you, Mr. Chair, you'll see there's a map that outlines the geographical area that's covered. And then you'll note that within the fee structure, City of Cambridge notes that the population density and data supplied by it's sort of their ArcGIS system. So it's their mapping system that they have, and they're giving sort of that estimate on population data.
Yeah. And then when it gets, so for instance, in 2025, I think it says there's 1,002 people that live in that geographical area. And that's the per cap, and then it's the per capita, but then how does that get translated to the tax bill? Is it by house? Is it just taking that amount and dividing it up by the households, or is there an assessment component to it? How does that get billed out?
Yes, so through you, Mr. Chair, it is based on assessment, so there is, the specific number of roles or properties that, are within the area that this amount gets applied to, but it's based on the assessed value, so it's not necessarily 1,000 homes, get billed equally $100. It would be based on the assessed value, which we receive through MPAC, with the roll return each year, and then that's inputted into our tax system. So it's not, you're not necessarily gonna pay the exact dollar amount as your neighbor.
Okay, understood. And then just looking for a little bit more clarity on, through the budget part of it, the line of surplus/discount. And I'm just not clear on what that is.
So if you, Mr. Chair, these are budgeted expenses, they're not actual.
Right.
So you'll note that Cambridge has done sort of a forecast
Yeah.
for the contract term, forecasting out all of the direct and indirect costs that would feed into the per capita costs that we're seeing. And where they're mentioning there could be a surplus or a discount is when they get their actuals for that year. They'll be able to determine if they've overcharged or undercharged. And so when we look back at our previous, there were minor discounts that were provided. Yes.
Is there ever a risk that that amount will be like an add-on?
So, you, Mr. Chair, I'd say that they've included that surplus as a potential, but we historically haven't seen that within the last 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good.
Okay.
Mr. Spose?
Yes, for the residents who are paying the share of this fee, what sort of range are the residents being charged? High to low type of thing, or if you got an average number, this like a appreciation of the number.
Yes. So through Mr. Chair, the new agreement and again, this is average. We didn't want to give one particular
That's
assessment. It's around $103 per installment. So remembering there's 4 installments per year. That's the new agreement fee at the 213,000 amount. And then the general tax base, because remember, we're working towards having 50% of the contract fees covered by the general tax base. It works out to about $20. So we're sort of trying to make that shift, but again, the general tax base is a larger number of properties that it's going to be dispersed across.
Okay, so you're saying it's 120 over
$103 per
103 per
install.
installment, yes.
That's their portion on an average.
Yeah, on average,
and
that's
so how many installments we're looking at?
4 installments
So
per
we're
year.
looking at $400.
And just while you're on that question line, and that's at the new cost of around 225K, right?
correct.
Okay, the 225K. How much, okay, we're supposed to have the entire amount, 50% by 2026. How much are you assuming in 2025 to be paid? In other words, is it the 40, what is
40% of 225 or? is it-
yeah,
The percentage of how much will be paid by the general tax base.
Yes.
So, I don't know the percentage, we can,
So here's maybe a better way to ask it. In the budget that's being proposed,
Mhm.
has there been an increase to the budget line that the rest of the public is paying to accommodate this new service agreement?
so through Mr. Chair, that we still need direction from council on that as we work through it. Right now, with the old contract agreement, council had directed staff to allocate around $5,700 per year up to 2026. To make sure that the full 50% was shifted to the tax base, general tax base. Right now, if we wanted to reach that goal by the end of this contract, which is 2027, that number would need to increase from 5,700 per year to around 16,000. So we would be needing to reallocate a larger number year over year until 2027 in order to get the full 50% on the general.
okay, so what is the budget proposed for 2025 assume?
So if you, Mr. Chair, our Director of Finance and I are still working on that. We will make a recommendation to council for direction if you'd like to increase those numbers, to still reach our 50th target.
So to stay at the current percentage, I think I'm hearing it's gonna have to go up a minimum of 11,000 to stay at our current percentage. To make 40% of 225K. That's what you're trying to get at.
I'm trying to get at, yeah, but certainly I wouldn't want to make a decision this time. I'd like to leave it for the budget discussions. It just gives me a feel for the numbers, so I can roll the numbers in my sleep.
Because if we don't increase the contribution, then say we're at 40% right now, service agreement's going up, then it's going to say we're only subsidizing at 36%. There's gonna
Exactly.
there's gonna be a shift there unless we add levy.
Yeah, exactly.
So you understand it?
Yep.
So,
Yeah, that's right for me, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Councilor Bailey?
Yeah, maybe just piggybacking on that. So for budget, when we see it, could you show us the different options? So if we want to maintain getting to the 50%, what that looks like, or if we want to. Wait a minute.
No, I know.
Know what I mean, what the option is. So whether we don't increase it, what that would look like, and then what we would need to increase it.
So there's three things. There's
Yeah.
going to 50, there's staying the status quo,
Staying.
which will mean we'll go less than 40%.
Yeah.
And staying at 40%, still graduating in, you know what I mean? Because 40% of 227 is a lot more than 40% at the old service agreement.
So three options.
So there's three things
Yeah.
there to,
Yes.
you got it?
I got it.
This is a question for, Chief McNeil. I've heard different terms thrown around. We were talking about a service agreement. I've heard mutual aid and automatic aid. Can you speak to whether either the automatic aid or the mutual aid occurs within this zone?
So the automatic aid, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, to members of council, the automatic aid would not be for this portion that's covered under the fire service agreement. So automatic aid is like services. So like we have with Rockwood, in the event of a fire in Puss Lynch, Rockwood comes with a pumper and personnel. It's vice versa. We would go to Rockwood in the event of a fire with a pumper and personnel. So there's no cost to it. It's just we're helping each other out. Mutual aid could happen in this area. So I'll use if there's a fire, Cambridge would obviously be first in under the agreement. We would come in, we would be dispatched at the same time in the event of a fire. Where mutual aid comes in is if we need tankers to help with water. So right now we have mutual aid throughout the entire province. Every municipality in Ontario takes part in mutual aid.
Okay, and if mutual aid does happen, there's no added cost to that. That's okay. Does mutual aid happen in the north of the zone?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we've had mutual aid activation in the north section. It was my second day that I started as the chief. We had a significant fire in that north section. So we had mutual aid tankers from Guelph. We had mutual aid tankers from Cambridge. We had them from Rockwood. So yes, it does happen.
Okay, so there is potential for extra service without paying for it. You look at it that way. Okay. And then just to follow up, I think Councillor Hurst actually kind of touched on it, but the agreement that's in front of us today is proposed for 3 years, but can you just speak to sort of what we're locked into or what flexibility we have if some changes come about with the fire master plan partway through this agreement?
So through you, Mr. Chair, we have the 180-day termination. So does Cambridge. Both parties are entitled to that termination clause. And so there's a great relationship between the chief for Puss Lynch and the chief for Cambridge. There's a lot of collaboration there. So it wouldn't be anything that it wouldn't be a surprise that we are looking to do this sort of plan. They're going to assist us with some data as well. And so if there is the need to terminate early, but prior to the 3 years, that would be through discussions between the chiefs and then obviously with their council and giving them formal notice.
Okay, so you spoke to termination. What if it's just an amendment to the agreement? Is it still that time frame, or can that happen at any time?
So through you, Mr. Chair, it would be something that, depending on what the change looks like, because again, we're drawing on City of Cambridge resources. And so there has to be that consideration that they still have their own obligations to their residents. So it really depends on the type of change and the scale of it.
Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
All right, I'm gonna start out. I don't like the 180-day termination clause. Because any change of this contract is going to be a detriment to our budget. And I want Cambridge to feel that we're in for the 3 years. So for me, if there's gonna be termination, it has to be 180 days from December 31st, so that we have time to go through a budget process to absorb the 225K. That's almost 5% increase, so council pulls the chute in March after a budget process. Now you're gonna have a number out at the public, and now you're gonna need another 5%. So for me, I think that we should be telling Cambridge, we're in for the 3 years. Because then we'll have the fire master plan come back. That gives us sustainability in there, budget sustainability. If there's gonna be a cancellation, it has to be 180 days within the end of the year. So that gives us plenty of time to budget for that change. So I'll have council discuss that. Automatic aid versus mutual aid types of things. Mutual aid is not intended to be that we use neighboring resources all the time. Chief, my understanding, mutual aid is for when you've exhausted your resources and you need help. So I don't want to get the township into a situation where we're abusing mutual aid because we're like, oh, we need you to cover this area and we're not going to pay for it. Just call mutual aid. So, Chief, maybe you could, if I'm wrong, that's fine. It's been, I don't get down in those details, but if you could just explain when mutual aid is appropriate and what it's not appropriate for in your estimation.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so I'll just use the example of fires because that's generally when mutual aid is called. So mutual aid for us right now is when we need extra tankers for water because we don't have enough tankers to sustain the pumper. So we will call in tankers. Or if it's a prolonged event, right? So let's say we're at a house fire for 10, 12 hours, whatever it may be, and we need to cover the rest of the town. We could call mutual aid in for another department to do standby and cover off other emergency calls as they come in. What it's not for is, a fire comes in and me saying, well, can you dispatch Cambridge or Guelph just because we need them to be there first? That's not what it's for. It's when your resources are exhausted and you need help.
Just want clarity there because I just didn't want us thinking that we can get mutual aid instead of we have a primary responsibility for that response. And then the automatic aid, my understanding, that's great. If we always send a tanker to a grass fire for Rockwood and vice versa, it saves us having an extra truck and we work that way. That's all excellent stuff. So I then want to talk a little bit about this $103 per house. So if Cambridge were to want this additional section, and if it's at 225K, you're now adding $400 to every house on average to their tax bill, potentially. If it were 400 or 500K, you're talking $800.
Unless we ship more than the tax.
But we can have that discussion, but right now our status quo is 50%. So 50% subsidy from the remainder of the township, adding that. And I think that needs to be clear to those residents that people are, advocating for an increase in service. This is significant cost. And I don't think they know that. So that was pretty eye-opening, $103 per quarter at 225. And we're held to whatever a neighboring municipality wants to charge us. We really can't dictate those terms. So I just want that information out to the public that this is real money and it could be a real impact. Anyways, I think that's where we're at. I don't know if council, what are your thoughts on this termination clause? And if this happens mid-year, if the city would be more inclined for a little more, not more, but I want to show that we're supportive of the agreement. And then if it needs to end, we prefer it to happen at budget time versus mid-cycle. So that's what I'm trying to embed in here versus May, they give us 180 days, but February, they give us 180 days. We're 3/4 of the way through a year. So any thoughts on that, Councillor Hurst?
Yeah, I like it. I think it's a good addition. It provides budget clarity. It allows the flexibility, and I think less canceling agreement, more amending an agreement based on the fire master plan is kind of where my head was going, but I think it gives both parties clarity. And if changes are gonna be taking place, then they're done in a budget cycle. That allows good planning. So I'm supportive of it.
Councilor Bruni, your thoughts?
It makes sense to me. I have no real issue with it. I would just be cautious of how that's received by Cambridge and making modifications to the agreement.
Yeah.
If for whatever reason, they don't like that amendment, are
That's
we
fine.
putting things that, are we putting that relationship at risk? I don't know. I don't know what that relationship is, and I don't know, how much of a sticking point that is, or it could be, just something to be mindful of.
Councilor Wilson?
There's a question of staff. In my previous experience, we've never done something like that where you sort of tie it to a particular budget date. It might be something more difficult for them to swallow, given it's outside of the normal way to do business. But question to our fire chief: do you think Cambridge would go for this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to members of council, we do have a great relationship with Cambridge Fire. I can have this conversation with the fire chief of Cambridge today, as we're both at the same conference, so I can have that candid conversation with them today and get back to everybody before the week's over.
Yeah, I would support it, but I wouldn't fall on the sword.
No.
Interesting perspective, because I was just anticipating if anything was changing in the agreement, it was because we would want to change to it, not that they would want to terminate it. So I hadn't thought, the opposite kind of way. I think there needs to be some sort of security in terms of budget. Maybe this is a question for Mary, but is there any contingency fund or anything we can tap into if something like this were to go south and leave us, high and dry with, what are we at?
Well, it'll be
250, yeah,
2.25.
2.25.
I guess it's only 4%, not 5%.
Money back to the city council.
Oh, right, so it'll be offset.
It would,
But then we
so through
have-
Mr. Chair, it would be,
Right.
and,
It'd be a lesser
So there
service.
wouldn't be a budget impact. Oh, right, because we get that money, but then we wouldn't have the service.
We wouldn't have the service, which,
so through Mr. Chair, I do think that, as our chief alluded to, like the city of Cambridge is also looking for stability in their budget process. And we have that really great working relationship. We've had a service agreement in place with them for a long time. And so I don't anticipate that unless a significant change comes out of our fire master plan, which is driven by the township. But I also think the 3-year time frame that we have here is great. It gives us time to work through those changes without feeling under the gun to make changes. Could we like by 2026 or that, it gives us that appropriate time. So I wouldn't be too concerned with the 180-day termination clause. At this point, I think it's a good thing in place in the event that we need it, but we haven't used it in the past.
essentially they'd be sort of part of that process with us anyway.
And maybe we don't need,
Yeah.
I want them to feel that, we're essentially in for the 3 years because we're gonna be doing the master plan, that we're not gonna be pulling the chute. They're not gonna be getting noticed, but on the flip side, I didn't actually consider that we get the money back. Is there any component that, say we're still in the agreement in 3 years and we're gonna extend it again? Can we ask them that they give us 180 days notice that they're not willing to do another agreement?
Yes, so I haven't, through Mr. Chair, I haven't looked specifically at the renewal clause and what that looks like, but typically there is some a notice that needs to be provided for renewal.
It's all good. We need them. We need them for 3 years. I just wanted to make sure we had stability. It sounds like you can have the conversation, chief, but maybe after what Ms. White Fox pointed out, we would get the money back, but that wouldn't solve the service issue, but I was just more concerned about budget impact, but
I think we may be okay, so I'll leave it with you guys.
All right, so did you read the recommendation?
I did, and we have a Counselor Boyd moved and Counselor Sport seconded.
Was there any amendments required? Okay. All in favor? That's carried. There's your answer. All right, I'm gonna take a 5-minute break for everyone. Thanks, Chief, for joining us. I don't, if you're at a conference, we don't expect you to hang around for the rest of the meeting.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. Everybody have a great day.
Great. All right, welcome back, everyone. We'll deal with the next component of our agenda, which is the consent agenda. Could you read the recommendation, please, Ms. White Fox?
That consent agenda items listed for the November 20th, 2024 council meeting be received for information.
May I move for that, please? Councillor Hurst, Councillor Bailey, any items to be removed? Councillor Hurst?
No.
Go ahead. Nope. Schools?
That's 6, 7, and 6.8.
Okay. Councillor Bailey?
No.
All right, can we receive the remainder of those, please? All in favor? Okay, Councillor Hurst, 6.7.
Yeah, 6.7 is a Roma conference. They need an answer by November 27th of any delegations we wish to make. So I thought we'd discuss that.
Good catch. You have suggestions?
My suggestion is ERO 9196, which is a recommendation from staff concerning the use of excess soil. And also the Marston bypass, just keep hammering away at that. Those are the only 2 items.
Yeah. Good, Don, can we go to everybody else? Okay, go to. We'll figure out the body of what we're gonna submit later.
So if you, Mr. Chair, when we did delegate an emo on the Morriston bypass, we sort of indicated to them that our next steps would be to undertake this consultation, which we had red funding for, and come back to the MTO with whatever our plans look like for the downtown streetscaping, and that they might use some cost sharing in those initiatives. So we haven't done that yet. Because that's scheduled for the new year with the RFP going out probably sometime in January. So I'm just wondering if it's better suited to maybe target AMO 2025.
That would make sense. Okay, then I guess we concentrate on the soil then. Mr. Mayor, the issue we've had with Badger, I think that has to be vetted properly.
I agree. Back to the Morrison bypass, this second ERO or first, whichever order it's in, speaks to identifying 3 projects. And I think we should delegate and say that the Morrison bypass should be specifically mentioned because it's been on the radar. And then hopefully we have that drone footage available by then, if it isn't already. So let's keep that one in and
Okay,
just
fine, Mr.
speak
Mayor,
to the ERO.
I'll abide with your advice.
This is the bill 212.
Yeah, is it 212, but not, yeah,
No,
bill
it's
212.
212, yeah, no, 212, yeah.
Honestly, part of this bothers me that it's removing a component for a judge to allow people that have their property expropriated from getting an expansion of their basic eviction, so.
Extension, yeah.
Yeah, I have problems with Bill 212, but if they're gonna identify significant projects and they obviously put ours behind these other ones, we should be delegating to say that we deserve to be in that list.
That was my sentiment, is there's negative aspects of it and there's opportunities with it, but just maybe in regards to the bypass, I think Roma happens once a year and that's your opportunity. And I'm not sure we're doing our residents the best service. So just saying, oh, we're working on stuff. I think you take that opportunity and you hammer it. And if you can, any chance you get.
Well, and that other stuff is a sidebar, because that's being driven because they're not doing the bypass, so we're still working on that work, you know, the stoplight, like session one, no. I'm missing it now. Leslie, you know what I mean, that's a sidebar for them not doing the bypass, this is kind of saying, hey, if you're gonna identify projects, we feel that maybe the Morrison bypass should be considered. Especially if they have $3 billion in money to give as rebates to people. Does that sound fair?
I've got those 2 listed.
What do we need? I feel they don't accept it, but MNRF. We have site plan amendments that could be or we feel should have been classified as major amendments and they were deemed minor. And then we ended up with aqua farming. I feel we should speak specifically to MNRF around aqua farming and the consultation needed with the host municipality, the lack of monitoring, all that good stuff. Does that sound fair?
Yes, it sounds fair, Mr. Mayor, but, they have already approved it for that one particular location.
I know the University of Guelph was in attendance to that site tour and more likely looking at it in Mill Creek property because they won't support the science center. So to me, they're trying to go all in the fish farming. So I feel there's more on the horizon. So I think it's an opportunity to say, hey, we're not saying no, but we need more consultation. I think there's concerns around, like I said, the large versus minor classification of this amendment was a operational change, right? Which should dictate a major. I'm speaking. Yeah, there's a lot going on there, but we can make a list for MNR. Orson still. What about Roselle and the silt berm in the ponds? That was one of my comments.
We can address that as part of the,
Our reports, so. I think, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. We can work, let's put in for MNRF. And we can hash out maybe a little bit later the fine details of which components we have concerns with, but I still have blending concerns, enforcement concerns. You know, stock, not being interim land uses, they're potentially adding, oh, that's the other one. Remember they were talking about adding ancillary uses for different trucks and things of that nature. So there's a lot that we could. All right. So,
that's all we have.
so that's 6.7. What was 6.8?
6.8 is Bush's profile features, just, kudos to staff for continuing doing a good job. It's nice to see all these, recognition of what we've got happening in our community. Yeah, one of the, Ironton, he's one of the members on the, Bush's High Speed Committee too, so nice touch, we saw you read them about it.
So I'll back up to 6.7. You have that list. Is there any other delegate request for Roma? Sorry, other you can think of?
Funding or something.
MOF. Well, I'm hammering them from a capital perspective on that. So
No, I think these are good.
Are there any organizations that are there that aren't ministry? That, you know, like we did an Ontario Hydro one once. So there's other groups that are there that you can.
won't blame.
Funding.
Through Mr. Chair, just the MMAH with the pension plan administration. I'm not sure if that's worthwhile to attempt to, I know we had put in a delegation before, but it was with the MOF, and then we were shifted to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, who,
Dismissed us.
and then, so it just, given some of the information that's been provided to us, just with a review that's taking place for the pension administrator, maybe it is a good time to see if we are successful with that delegation at Roma.
Sure. I think that's.
Another minor one you thought about was a solar farm, which is discussed. Like we have our own process we're going through, and yet they're asking for a letter of consent. I don't know if that was worthy of us to say, look, guys, you're putting the cart before the horse. It's important that we have our process first before we give you a letter of consent.
Maybe we could combine the two. I don't know, full separate delegation, and is that as an age rate? Or we could put it for two.
And perhaps through Mr. Chair, we could get a little bit, that one's so new that I just would want us to research it a little bit more before we, yes, and understand, and it sounds like this is a brand new process from what our delegate said, and getting a handle on what that looks like, I think, first.
So we have a recommendation to put in for those delegation requests. You have them listed. Gonna move for that, Mr. Spillis, second by Counselor Hurst. Any last comments? All in favor? It's carried. And then we need to receive 6.8 for information.
I added it for
Oh, did you?
resolution, as long as you're okay with
Yep.
that, council, just to
That's
both tidied up.
perfect. Public meeting, November 27th, 2024 at 7 PM. Public information meeting held in person at municipal office, 7404 Wellington Road 34. And by electronic participation through Zoom regarding the following. Zoning bylaw amendment application D14 QUI 1873 Town Line Road. Zoning bylaw amendment application D14 JEF 86 Barnum Road. Zoning bylaw amendment application D14 SCR 4438 Watson Road. Sit, and I believe we'll break, returning 12:30. We're closed.
For closed session, correct.
Thank you, everyone that's attended so far. All right, welcome back, everyone. Ms. Whitefox, you have a resolution, I think it's in the closed or recommendation.
Yes, the council shall go into closed session under section 239 of the municipal act for the purpose of a confidential report regarding personal matters of an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and it's in relation to a market review, and to review the confidential minutes from previous closed meetings as listed.
All right. Hang on, move on, please. Councilor Hurst, Councilor Spillis, all in favor? Carried. We were closed.
Yeah.
All right, welcome back. Ms. Whitefox, you have a couple recommendations coming out of closed.
The council moves into open session at 2:34 PM.
I need a mover, please. Councilor Hurst, Councilor Bailey, all in favor? Carried. Next.
The council receives the confidential report regarding personal matters of an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. And that's in relation to the market review and the confidential minutes from the previous closed meetings as listed.
All right, can you move for that, please? Councilor Hurst, Councilor Spillis, in favor? It's carried. All right, I believe we're on to 9.2.1. Okay, all right, Mrs. Sam.
Good afternoon, Council. So this is our annual cost of living adjustment report. You'll notice based on the recommendation there that it's recommended that the carryover from previous years no longer be carried forward based on the compensation and benefits review that we have underway currently. I'd be happy to answer any of Council's questions.
All right, Ms. Whitefox, can you read the recommendations?
That report FIN 2024-032 entitled 2025 Proposed Cost of Living Adjustment be received. And that council approve a cost of living adjustment of 3% effective January 1st, 2025. And that the remaining 2.9% of cost of living adjustment carried forward from 2024 no longer be carried forward. As the township completed a comprehensive compensation and benefits review in 2024, which will result in salary grid adjustments effective January 1st, 2025 to ensure the township's compensation is in line with comparative municipalities.
Can I get a mover for that so we can discuss it? Councilor Spillis, Councilor Hurst, thank you. All right, any comments, Councilor Hurst?
No, I'm good with staff's recommendation.
Great.
I'm good.
Comment? Next, we'll see this with the budget next week.
It will be incorporated, correct?
Okay, yeah, quarter budget discussion, all in favor? All right, it's carried. All right, 9.3.1. See that? That's, Sarah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the purpose of this report is to provide council with an annual status update on the progress and measures taken to implement the township's 2022-2026 multi-year accessibility plan as in Schedule A.
Thank you. Your recommendation to read, please.
Yes, that report ADM 2024-055 entitled the Township of Pleasant Annual Accessibility Status Report be received for information.
Can you mover, please? Councilor Hurst, Mr. Spillis, any questions for Ms. Heater? Councilor Hurst.
I do, just a couple very, very high level. Have we received any public feedback on our accessibility program at all?
Through you, Mr. Chair, not that I'm aware of this.
Okay. And can you just speak briefly to plans underway for 2025? activities as part of the accessibility report. I saw in the report, there was some plan changes to the PCC and the office. Can you maybe just elaborate on what those may be?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it is my understanding there are a few changes that are going to take place at the PCC, to the bar area, as well as to the office. I believe Mr. Fowler could possibly speak better to that. He's not here with us at the time. I know there is something as well that we discussed, that they are within the budget looking to also purchase a piece of equipment that will help the public works staff maintain the accessibility of the paths that have been built through around the back of the Messenger Community Center Park to ensure that they do remain at a standard for accessibility.
Thanks, that's helpful. I was looking for a bit more understanding what those were, so I'll leave it to him to explain and part of the work plan in the future. Thank you.
You're getting another second, right? Yeah, all in favor? That was carried. Township corporate seal, you're up again.
I'm up
A big
again.
smile.
That's right. So through you, Mr. Chair, the purpose of this report is to provide council with the proposed official corporate seal bylaw for consideration to adopt the use of both the embossed seal and a new electronic seal. So for the purposes of us being able to certify the authenticity and integrity of township documents in both ways.
Okay, recommendation.
Yes, so it's to receive report 2024-056 entitled Potential Essential Corporate Seal Bylaw. And the council gives 3 readings to bylaw 2024-069, being a bylaw to authorize an official seal for the corporation of the township of Passage.
Okay, can we move for that, please? Councilor Hale, Councilor Spoulis, any questions or comments on the official seal? Just go ahead, sir.
I'm very sorry. I feel like I'm asking lots of questions. So I think this is good as evolution for the municipality. I'm curious, have you considered any cybersecurity for utilization of electronic seal so that it couldn't be used in a nefarious manner?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, we haven't taken that into consideration, but we could look into that further.
I don't know what that looks like, but it occurred to me that once you digitize things, you sometimes lose total control over them.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have opportunities through our PDF software to ensure that we're flattening documents, as well as we could be implementing password protection. With that being said, when you DocuSign a document, it does actually eliminate the ability to edit them. And so these seals would be used on DocuSign documents, so there should be limited risk from a security perspective.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that, because that was the one when I was reading it. I'm like, I'm fully supportive, but it just occurred to me, it's like just making sure that there's processes. So thank you for that.
Okay. Yeah. All right, yeah, sorry.
Yes, we remember.
Okay, all in favor? Now it's carried. Oh, boy. 9.3.3, have to be long. Are you comfortable? All right, so this is Justine, do you want to give a little synopsis there?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the purpose of this report is to provide council with the remaining 2024 annual monitoring reports, which have not been brought before council up to this point, as well as the 2024 aggregate compliance assessment reports. There are a number of recommendations just related to forwarding some of our peer reviews to the pit operator and the MNR for their information consideration. And then any comments that council may have related to the reports.
Are you gonna make you read that whole thing?
I saw that. Well, I can do that if you want. You decide. What do you think?
I'm fine with just saying as presented.
Now, I have just amended it slightly, but just the first line,
Oh, sure, read it.
I've just said, that we're going to receive the compliance assessment reports and annual monitoring reports with the exceptions of Schedule Q and V. And that just allows council to participate.
Okay, so I've made points on a bunch of these, so I'll ask council if you have notes on them, or if you'd rather me just burn through some of these. The intent is to have staff maybe go back and compare them, so I'm seeing a few head nods, you're ready to rock, so get ready to scroll. So let me just find my first note. I gotta get to the compliance assessment reports. Scroll on. Okay, so sorry.
Can I just ask, how would you like us how would you like for minutes? How do you want this tracked? Is there any, do you want this just coming? The idea that this will eventually come back to council in a comprehensive list, so that you guys can look at it again compared to.
I think the idea is that I'm gonna say some stuff and then you're gonna digest it and see if it has any value, and if not, it doesn't have to go any further, but. So I'm gonna read out the license permit number, my concern with the compliance report,
Okay,
and then you can look at it after and report back to council. Because what I wanna do also is compare to our concerns from last year, we submitted 47
Mhm.
to this year.
Mhm.
See if there's been any changes and
Can you just send this to her in an email?
I do want some of these on the public record. And it'll be quick, it won't be long. Just, can I have your indulgence?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna get, I'm just gonna get myself prepared.
Sure.
One moment here.
So my first one will be 56, license number 5654. Actually, I don't think I have any.
Sure, sure, right.
Yeah, I'm just going through the. Some notes for finished. So this is a common concern I have with, so this is 5654, I believe, I don't know which schedule that is. Under section C 22, it's importation of material. For rehabilitation, blending, or recycling, and it just says in compliance.
Like a schedule number?
Schedule left is 5654, but it's, Mr. Mayor, but that's inactive bid.
I know, but it says this, it says where it's in compliance. But they don't indicate any material that you're reporting to the site. So if you're gonna say you're in compliance, then that means you're importing material for rehabilitation or blending or recycling. So for that one, I'd like you to follow up with the author and get clarification that no material was imported. That needs to be reported on all of them. So does that make sense? If you're saying you're in compliance, that your importation of material for rehab, blending or recycling, yes, you then need to indicate what material you're bringing in, or NA, or no material imported. Because what we're seeing is sites being used as stockpiling sites or being imported for different uses. So I just want this more accurately reported.
Mr. Mayor, this is an inactive site, so there is no C form on this one.
Sorry, so then. Down to the next one. Sorry, I did scroll past 5482, sorry, Glen Christie Company Limited. Sorry, I apologize. I was just going to my first note. 5482.
G, yeah.
G?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so that can just reach out to, that's gonna be a common one, is if they put in compliance but didn't indicate whether they import material or not, they need to be offered.
Do you, Mr. Chair, would it be appropriate then at the same time to ask if the material has brought in, is it in compliance with the excess soil regs and also
Sure.
noted on the excess soil registry properly?
Yes. So. Okay, so I don't have any further comments on that. Well, I'm scrolling. So my next one is 483. Let me just see if I got a comment. 483. Okay, so 5483, which is Schedule H. Again, under C 22, air materials imported for processing from other licensed sites. The existing note on the site plan does not provide clarity on this practice, and so this is great for us because it states they're not in compliance and they're going to have a amendment to their site plan. Where every other reporter, CARS report, they just indicate yes in compliance and we're importing under the blending permission. So this is one that I want to add to our items for Crystal, our meeting with Crystal in December. Because I feel we should get clarity on whether this is a major or minor amendment to their site plans, change of operations. We've been seeing that MR has been deeming a lot of these as minor. So here's the first time we're seeing that this person is stating that blending does not give you the permission to import material for processing, which supports our position. So to me, that's good news. So
The action of that one is just to add to the, yes, that's just to add it to the, Crystal that we want to speak with her at our meeting in December. You're just gonna have to bear with me, I'm trying to go as fast as possible. All right. So this was 57. Here's the sidebar I missed one. So again, this is gonna be repetitive. 5497 Schedule I. They're indicating in compliance with material for rehabilitation. Actually. So
5497.
Schedule I, 5497. Indicating material you are importing to the site, and it says aggregate. And my concern here is they're not permitted to import under blending permissions. So highlight that. Take a look at that, and that could be reported as a concern to our local office.
Notice it,
C22, Schedule
about the schedule.
I, so yeah, Schedule I, C22 again. They indicate they're importing aggregate. And C22 listed as blending permissions. So this is that, you know, now we've gone away from interim land use to a processing site that's there for in perpetuity. So,
Mr. Mayor, on that one, they're also importing concrete and asphalt.
and I don't know, I didn't check their site plan to see if they're permitted, but at least they're identifying the materials they brought in. So that's, but they identified aggregate, so in my opinion, they don't have permission to bring in raw material for processing. Okay, so that was I. And then scroll, what do I have here? So on that same one, under, I'll leave this one. My note is not actively extracting, not in compliance with the PPS. So again, they're a processing plant. They're not a pit, so they're not in compliance with the interim land use, but that we can.
Is there no more, they said no more extraction?
I've just seen zero disturbed lands under D7. It's all historical. So they're not extracting there, so this is.
It's not in compliance with their rehab,
Sorry, which
but I
location?
don't understand that same one,
What's the notes there?
same Schedule I,
But the D.
D1. I
Okay.
don't understand what their comment is in regards to that, but it says not in compliance. Their rehab.
Okay, so. So I also on that one. I've asked staff to look into FOI inspections and site plan amendments because it states here. You know what, maybe I should just,
So are you on the next one then?
no, I think it's still the same one. Oh, it's under general comments. MNRF NOI dated September 23. There was site plan amendments to September 23rd, which is still under review. This is, I believe. McNally. I can follow the staff on that one.
St. Mary's concession too.
Yeah, which is McNally. Yeah, it's here, it's here. So, but I think staff's are, that's fine, I can leave that one. Okay, 5514, see if I have any comments on 5514. So usually most of them are under that C22. No, we're good on that
Well,
one.
I have a comment because they're saying they're importing asphalt, concrete, aggregate, and my questions are they're bringing in from other sites for processing.
I might have missed that one.
5514.
Yeah, is it under C22?
Yeah, it should be under C22.
Indicators are part of the site, asphalt, concrete, construction materials imported for recycling. So I didn't flag that one because am I on the right one?
Yeah,
Right here? What did I say, 5514?
which is large on the list here.
I didn't see aggregate listed. Yeah,
It's there.
does it say aggregate?
Oh, no, it doesn't.
C22.
Asphalt, concrete, construction materials.
So that one I didn't flag because it's not saying aggregate.
Okay. So we say aggregate.
So a lot of them have that for recycling purposes. They're allowed to bring in the 5520.
So no note on
No.
schedule J?
I
Okay.
didn't see any there, no. 5520 is the next one. Sorry, I'm scrolling as fast as I can. If I use that slide bar, it skips over them too fast. I guess. So this one is capital. C21. And
Number are you on?
Schedule K, I believe. Did I say 5520?
Yep, okay, okay.
Schedule K. Buildings and other structures. This is one we need to bring up with Crystal. The existing buildings in the licensed area are shown on the site plan.
22.
Oh, sorry.
No.
Oh, sorry.
C21.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was getting excited here. So again, this one is, sorry, C22, they're importing and stockpiling material. My note is site is used as a processing and stockpiling site, not an interim land use. Not permitted to import material for processing. So again, this one is liberal interpretation of the blending permissions. So I like that for review from last year. That's 5520. Get a little excited because. And then another note, D7, how many years of no extraction on that 5520? We can look at CARS reports for that 5520. They'll just show that they're just using it as a processing site. Okay. Burn. Yeah, that's the Schneider sign, Coburn pit, is what that one we just talked about. Sorry, I know it's painful, but 5573. This one, this will save us having a whole separate meeting, hopefully. I don't believe I have any notes for 5563. Oh, so 5563, they have a new disturbed area for 2024. I want to ensure that that is incorporated into the industrial tax class. Because once they disturb an area through the assessment review board, then it moves from the residential tax base to the industrial. So we can ensure that mapping. Sure. Sure. Sorry.
No, that's good.
Yeah. 6, which is Schedule M. How many of these schedules is there? I'm sorry, I went through all these. I know, I'm trying to go fast. Just what? Okay, so I don't have any for M.
Do I have anything for him? They're saying there's no material being brought up the site, and my question is that true? Because I see a lot of trucks going from that Victoria pit to the Allen ramp to bring in material. I'm wondering if they're using it, they're getting stuff from some other sites, stockpiling it and moving it in there.
We can inquire. I think that would be added to that list from Alan. Sorry, I'm trying to book it here.
So,
Yeah, but let's see if I have a note. 610. Nothing, 5610, 5631. Getting solar. Yeah, a note here, same thing.
which number?
So, 5631. So again, this one could just go back to the author. I have improper response, indicate any materials that you are importing. We know that the site note says you can bring in asphalt concrete. We want to know if you imported any material, and you can even word it as were you in compliance with the OREG. So it's more about reporting these things accurately. Okay. Oh, this one. Hold on a second, back up. Yeah, is this 5631 still that I saw, see? So here's another note, if you looked at the satellite imagery, they blurred out the stockpiles. See how it's all gray? So my note is this pit captured in the industrial tax class because they're using it for stockpiling? I don't know why they blurred out the stockpiles. Because it all blends together, you know. So
Is
they're
that
gonna,
phase one?
I don't know what phase it is, but it's on the right side, see this satellite imagery?
Yeah, that's.
So if you were coming to look at the pit, you might not realize there's a separate pit there and it didn't get captured in the industrial tax class, but they're definitely using it. If you go to Google Earth and look at the satellite imagery, there's stockpiles all under that gray area they blurred out. So I just want to confirm that that's being caught in the industrial tax base.
Well, my comment was they're stating not bringing in from other sites for processing and those stockpiles here, indication that would be.
And is it a technicality because is the processing happening on the license next door and they're only piling up there?
Could be, yeah.
So again, blending permissions don't mean you can import raw material for processing. Sorry, what number was that one?
So 5631,
Yeah, I'm on 5654.
which is the same as what we saw in Schedule F.
Okay. 64, schedule P. Don't believe I have anything on that one.
That's the one I questioned and, the, Q. And, my concern with it is when's the actual hog can be removed, and the military staff was it's already partially removed, it'll be, remain to be done by the end of the year.
So do we just ask them to notify us on that?
Just make a note of that so that when we see next year's car, right?
Yeah, exactly. So,
Almost scroll like a madman. Now I'm on 5710. Does that make sense? Yeah. Schedule R. Let me see if I have it in there. Again, C22. They need to indicate if any material and what that material is coming in, not that they have permissions to.
Schedule Q, right?
Schedule R 5710.
Schedule R 5710.
Oh, R one there.
Yeah.
Was there anything for Q?
Not
No.
that I
Oh,
have. Same thing, C22, no indication of what the materials are.
Okay, my recollection was that, they're storing asphalt and concrete and not in a designated area. Remember this, we flagged it last time around, or they're doing this, they're still doing it.
Yeah, so. Maybe this conference list we filled it all to Crystal, I don't know. We'll discuss that later. All right, so that's R, S, I don't think I have anything for S, we'll scroll right quick.
Right into there. Note B6 states that these storage tanks are within 30 meters of the pond, and yet it's noted as compliant. I thought they were supposed to stay outside of 30 meters.
We're on 5737?
Yeah, that's what the hatchery. It's an active without fish hatchery, and the note says storage tanks are within 30 meters of pond area, and yet it's noted as compliant.
Is that B6, no B6?
Correct.
So I have a note as well. Site is presently inactive for extraction. Fish runs operating in the north end of the pond. The site plan amendment approval was completed in 2022. So I want to FYI those site plan amendments. Because we don't get circulated on any of that stuff and it's an operational change possibly, and it could be major, minor, you know.
Sorry, Mike, sorry, I had another comment on this as well. Mr. Chair, I don't believe our bylaw permits containers to be used. Shipping containers, it's not a,
No, this, I think these are plastic vats type of thing. I don't think they should be contained.
Any storage
I
container.
was
barrels.
thinking of the ones that we viewed at the Lansing pit, which were large
Oh, okay.
shipping containers. That's what I was envisioning this was, but perhaps not.
It says containers.
Storage tanks.
Those were the tanks that put the dead fish in, I think.
I think so, yeah.
But we
We
can,
can have some,
just clear.
well. Well, the issue for me is that within 30 meters, they shouldn't be. within 30.
And Schedule T. Which is 5738. I'm sorry, this is a pain in the arse, but I'd rather do this now. Okay, so the same thing, 5738, C22, raw feed is imported as per production requirements. This is again, they're bringing in raw material under the blending permission. And as indicated on that one I showed, they are agreeing with us that blending is not a permission to import raw material, so we'll raise this concern with
C22.
Schedule T 5738, C22. Raise that with Crystal.
Asked the question, Steph asked, is this raw feed for production requirements is correct? And Steph's response was, sent the question to a pit operator for response, but didn't hear back.
So I'd like to bring that up with Crystal next week. All right, schedule U, we're getting close. Gotta get out of here 4:15. That then for schedule U, everything Councilor Schools.
Clean building.
Schedule B. Sure. You know, so we keep the.
Yep.
And, you know, I don't have anything for Q and B.
We were giving this after, right? But there wasn't,
Yeah.
we're receiving them after. Okay.
Schedule W. Same. So same note, C22, Schedule W. Importation of clean fills permitted. Need clarification if it's meeting the O regs. And also, they're not identifying what material, they're just saying clean fill. So. W.
Okay, they also had a comment at D2 waiting for approval to complete slopes by September 2025.
Then you have a concern with that comment? Or?
No, it just is something, why should they get the approval, are they gonna do that slopes before they get the approval?
And are they gonna use O-reg compliant fill? I would assume, right? Okay, schedule X.
I think it was a typo.
Oh. Same one. So this one, schedule X, C22, no material appear to be imported. Appear doesn't work for me. They need to.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, schedule X, I couldn't find the number 2012.
Neither could I. Well, it's on my sidebar here, it says 200. 212. Was that 20,012? Is that typo?
Mr. Chair, typo.
So what should it be?
It should be 2022.
Oh, that schedules Z as
Yeah,
well.
exactly.
It's duplicated. Okay. So either one, schedule X or Z, sorry, I'm American. I don't like the words appear. I want a confirmation from the author whether if material was imported, what those materials were, please. So I don't have to do, I shouldn't have to do Z then because. Yeah, I thought I saw them. Anyways, that's fine. All good. But I feel like I need a secondary on the second one. The second time I read it, I picked up on something else. I had concerns that, pretty sure I made it on here.
On purpose.
I believe it's Forestel Road and they have license across the street. What's their intent to haul material across the road? So just a flag for staff that we don't permit rock trucks to cross our road there if they develop that. So that's more of just a heads up. And maybe flag that with the ministry.
It needs to be, usually there's a haul route that's indicated with the permit to make sure that there's the proper traffic studies that are done too. But you're right, not operating rock trucks, but they still have to do it in an Olympic.
Just on your radar, because eventually they're gonna open up that southern portion and they're gonna be wanting to haul across the road. Next one. Oh, this might be, this is, 285, and that's Schedule AA. I don't know if I have anything. Yes, I do, same thing, C22. You're on this one though, but
Which one is this, sorry?
this is Badger,
A-
double A.
Okay.
And it's clean fill passing table one, being imported to facilitate rehabilitation, but we've had reports that it wasn't table one, so maybe this one we can bring up to Crystal, if we can get confirmation.
Did we get a response back from?
Yeah, you did. It says pit operator advisor capital reporting some excess soil storage location that was generated from their project at the new South End Community Center in Guelph off Clare Road. Soils came from the undeveloped areas of this project site and met the MSEP standards for table one soil.
Okay, so we don't need to do anything with that one. Okay, so on their mapping, or on their compliance report, they indicated that there was some challenges with area 4 of their site. And if you look, area 4 is in the corner where Badger Daylighting was operating, or is operating. And the note on his sketch says, area 4 location with remedial action items based on July 12, 2024 MNR inspection report. So I'd like to FOI that July 12th FOI or MNR report, or ask for it. You can just ask for
I've
it.
already asked for it.
Okay, good. But the concern for me that is the wording here, new building identification on site plans. The report includes so it sounds as though the MNR is going to identify those buildings to legalize them of some sort. So I want to have a discussion with Crystal about those buildings and their authority to approve them. I'll just kind of leave it at that. Does that make sense? Because that report may show up. BB, how many is there after BB? What do we go to? L?
We did that already.
Did we?
What's the same as action said?
Oh, good. So we can go CC.
I just saw something the second time through.
The third time.
I might have done the road crossing on the third time through because I didn't see it on the second time through. Let me see my notes there, just because I don't want to waste your time. What's embarrassing is the way I'm chairing this meeting. I didn't even know it. Yes, I did put a note on this one.
The third time around.
Yeah, man. You see how I agree. Okay, anyways, CC.
4 times in here.
CC. I don't know, something just popped up my screen. I don't know how to get rid of this. See over here.
Yeah.
So we're on schedule CC. I don't know if I have any, I do, same thing. C22, no materials imported in the pit, importation of clean fill permitted. I think we need to, reference the OREGs.
Which one is it? Sorry.
This is schedule CC.
Okay.
Because they're importing clean fill, their idea of clean fill and the permitted idea of clean fill could be two separate things. Sorry, Jessica, I'm trying to.
Is this okay?
We're almost done. I don't know, it's just. What I have here, sorry, I forgot which one.
DD.
Oh, so this one I wrote that CVM is using this site as a silt pond, not in compliance with their site plan. So if you go to Google Earth and zoom in on the plant that's located there, you can kind of see it. There's little streams and rivers. Right at the border of the red line, which would be the west side, you can see the silt kind of sneaking into the pond. So I asked staff to look into whether this silt pond was part of any other discussions. And if not, then highlight that this is again non-compliance of the McNally area.
So this is DD. Yeah, D, right?
Correct, 624864. Especially Google Earth, you can zoom in and you can see the water rivers going into the
Is
pond.
that the southwest shoreline?
Yes,
It says earth moving has begun to shape the southwest shoreline in 2024.
well, and see this screen here? That one in the package, if you look just above the line that progressive rehabilitation is pointing to, you can see the silt in the water.
Yeah, yeah,
So they're filling it,
yeah.
because again, this is a processing plant, not an interim land use. Okay, next, E, good. This Cox Construction, I don't believe I have anything on this one. C22, okay. So again, they indicated in compliance, but they didn't indicate. C, schedule, double E, again, indicated compliance, but they didn't indicate the materials that are importing, so. That needs to be filled out. What are they right here? Oh, it's, and their general comments, license limits next to 5710 Northern Pit expansion needed to be staked, berm still in place, license appears to be an exhaustive aggregate. A few stockpiles remain on this license. So my note is ensure included in the industrial tax class.
That's that.
That is EE,
Oh, E.
and they're indicating few stockpiles remain on the license if they're utilizing it for stockpiling all the roads and all that stuff. Okay. Let's get that, will you take that? So this one, again, schedule FF C22 override compliant for their fill importation. And then, am I going too fast? C25, they put in that the Nakusa audit was completed when the pit was operational. A lot of these pits use these, what they call them, not temporary, portable pit, portable plants. And I put FOI acoustical report. It'd be very interesting to know what these portable plants are emitting for noise, because they have less stringent requirements for compliance for noise emission than a temporary. So that's how they avoid meeting those EPA requirements, is by bringing in portable plants and then using them in perpetuity. So it'd be nice to get that acoustical report. I'm awful, right?
No, work on, it'll take a little while to get, but hopefully the MNR is working with us on it.
Well, these are things we can just ask Crystal and that meeting, try and avoid some, so schedule GG. We're getting there. Hope they don't have any same thing. Oh no, C25 monitoring program, oh, you're right. Natural heritage. Oh, this is the one I wrote. Says natural heritage monitoring report is previously completed and submitted into MNR. Is this not the Roselle pit? And the silt barrier is not working correctly? And
Is that FF? No.
GG.
GG.
And we won't, I mean, we've kicked this soccer ball around a ton, but that's something we can bring up with Crystal, that we have those concerns. That silt barrier needs to be fixed, or HH.
And that was submitted separately because it was missing from the file.
Which one, HH or?
Yeah.
So you're on 6255710. Yeah, I am. I'm on II. Then I don't have comments for HH. Do you have anything from HH?
I looked at it, I wouldn't have the same comment as you on C22.
Yeah, it says importation of clean fill is permitted.
So for HH, I would follow up with them about OREG compliance.
Yeah.
So let's schedule HH C22. So here's a good example. II, my C22, that was the problem, no material imported. Good. So that's where these other people reporting need to, file it properly. I'm done with II.
There's nothing on II, or there is, was there any comments?
No,
No, it says no material.
no, I'm good. That wasn't that awful. Why are you laughing, Justin?
Anyways, so. Most of that, maybe we can just bring our meeting with Crystal, and if we don't get any traction, then we can do some FOIs and kind of work in the background. Also, I know that was a little bit of tedious, but I'm trying to get the message out there that you need to report these accurately, because of all the challenges we're having inside the ARA. There's some legitimate concerns there, and we just, if you're comfortable with all that mess, I just brought forward, and then I'll just open up for additional thoughts. Councilor Hurst?
No, I'm supportive. I think there's a high degree of merit of going through this in a public forum, so well done.
Yeah, I'm good. I have some suggested changes to the recommendations. Where recommendations deal with schedules A to E. The issue I have is two of the recommendations deal with our consultant commented on their comments, and our recommendation is to have our comments be forwarded to them for comments. Like the 2024 report is around the corner, so I basically, rather than have all this going into the 2024, I'm suggesting that we pass it on to them for their consideration in the 2024 report. In other words, whatever comments we had, we better look at it in the 2024 report.
Does this make sense to you? I know it's a lot of. We're kicking the
Yeah,
ball
I
back
know,
and forth.
and I asked a question, how many of these are being paid for by them, and 4 of the 6 are, the other 2 are not, so I just don't want to get into that. The other suggestion I had was to do with the Roselle pit, the specific berm. And I asked that the recommendation be set to the pit operator and MNRF requesting confirmation whether as recommended by Hardin, whether the barrier between lakes 2 and 3 will be raised to allow water levels in Lake 3 to equilibrate to its highest possible level. This was the barrier that the water rose up, and the private properties adjacent to it, the pond level went up. As a result, so the Hardin's basically saying, well, build it up even higher, so you even get even more stored in there, so that the adjacent property owners will have a uplift in their ponds. And I think that's sort of, that doesn't say specifically, it also ties into, I believe, to the wetland area we were concerned it was drying up. I think with this going up, I think that we should see an improvement in that as well.
I think we should incorporate our concerns again around the wetlands, and I'm being told it's the silt barrier not working properly, but I don't know what the situation is, but.
Well, that's a barrier between the 2 ponds.
I-
It should be high enough.
Yeah, I know it's a barrier, but I don't know if it's the same barrier. I don't know if there's a barrier between pond 2 and 3, or if there's another barrier on the property line.
Okay, I guess I'm going with our consultant recommended.
But I would, if we're gonna converse on this, can we just have staff reiterate our concerns around the impacts on the wetlands as well? Because it may not be the same fix. I don't know. Does that make sense? So it's sending 2 different correspondents of the same pit having a concern, just incorporate them.
I think what I would suggest, Mr. Mayor, have Courtney talk to Hardin and make sure it's not the same we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I still want to bring, and we'll bring this, then we'll just bring this up with Crystal as well.
Okay, and then the other recommendation was the Mill Creek Phase 6, again, review and consider the 2024 report as opposed to saying it to the bid operator for response. In other words, look at it and incorporate it for the 2024 report. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck looking at the 23 report, and the 24 report comes out at the same time.
So you have it all.
Yeah, I have that. I have the recommendation that came forward through the council Q&A.
Can you read them? Read it then? Or amend them?
So it's that report, ADM 2024-057, 2024 aggregate compliance assessment reports and annual monitoring reports, with the exception of Schedule Q and B be received for information. And the council directs staff to provide the response to the township's peer review from Dance Environmental Incorporated regarding the 2023 ecological and aquatic monitoring to the township's ecologists for review and comment consideration and with the 2020.
Strike out comment.
Pardon? Strike out
Or
comment for review.
Consideration for review and consideration of 2020.
Yep, with the 2024 report. And that council directs staff to send the township's peer review of the 2023 Roselle groundwater monitoring report to pit operator and MNR, requesting confirmation whether the recommendation by Hardin for the barrier between Lake 2 and Lake 3 will be raised to allow the water level in Lake 3 to equilibrate to its highest possible level. And the council directs staff to send the township's peer review of the 2023 Mill Creek Pit Phase 6, 2023 ecological monitoring report to the pit operator for response, for review and consideration with the 2024 report. And the council directs staff to send the township's peer review of the 2023 and 2022 Mass Snyder groundwater monitoring report to the pit operator and the MNR. And the council directs staff to send the township's peer review of the 2023 Aberfoyle Pit 2 groundwater monitoring report to the pit operator and the MNR. And the council directs staff to follow up with the MNR regarding the listing of compliance concerns identified with the 2023 cars as listed, and I have a list.
All right. Moved by Counselor Spillis, Counselor Hurst. This is excluding schedule Q and V, right?
Yes.
Okay, any concerns, Counselor Hurst? Mr. Goya? All in favor? That's carried, and we'll have a recommendation to receive
To receive for information, yes.
schedule Q and V. And move Counselor Bailey, Counselor Spillis, all in favor? That's carried.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
So every year, we're seeing these compliance things, which is great. Is there a method, is there an organizational thing where it can be all, can you now take all that and put it into an Excel spreadsheet? That then comes out with next year's compliance things and then just flag any differences or
Sure.
we can like just add a column then where we can add the next year's comments and then we can start to see year over year what's changed or what has not changed and what repetition we're, spending time on. And then if it's just Excel spreadsheet, we can all be referencing it pretty easily.
I wonder,
That,
no, I think it's
Doable?
good.
We prepared one for
We did.
you. I had one done up when we did it first time, social matters.
because I have one too, but it, they're all different. We all have different ones.
Good point.
Good job. Good job, Mayor.
All right. Now we're on to 9.3.4 ADM reporting out from council direction. More scrolling, let me get to the right spot. There you go. Justine.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the purpose of this report is to report back to council on a number of items. This direction from council and this report includes an update on the OPP's response regarding enhanced police presence on that road, an update on the county's automatic speed enforcement program, an update on the requested GRC reports, and an update on the Mini Lakes wastewater system upgrades.
Yes, it's to receive the report for information.
Get a mover, please. Councilor Hurst, Councilor Spillis. Questions for Justine only. Councilor Hurst.
Two quick ones. The Mini Lakes progress appeared to be quite positive, based on the previous delegation. It would appear that there's some delays that they're receiving from the MOECP approvals process. And maybe it's a question more than anything, Justine, is there anything we can do on behalf of the township to request that approval process be expedited within the MECP to help Mini Lakes get on with it? They've made great progress to date. You'd hate for it to just kept getting delayed.
Through you, Chair, I'm not sure if there's any steps that some can take.
Well, I would caution, in reading the report, it stated that not the tile bed, but the layer underneath, and it read to me that they were having challenges being, meeting compliance for them. So I'm not sure that we would play a role in that because you know, if they have a set of standards or, you know, building criteria and they're, you know, proposing something different and they're running into those challenges. But, that would be my worry, that it's just, you know, we're not asking for you, for MECP to, you know, turn blind eye to some bill or anything like that nature, but I don't know. Unless they're encountering delays just due to lack of staffing or overwhelming amount of applications, I think staff can reach out to find out the background on that, and if there's some advocacy that we could say, hey, we need an answer sooner than later, but if it's a design issue, then that's nothing we should be venturing into.
I'll leave it with staff. My recollection of reading the report, it was more procedural delays with work to rule issues that they were.
Oh, yeah, they did
dealing with
mention that,
NHCP.
that's right.
So yeah, I totally agree. Do not want to get involved in any, involved in the approval process beyond just saying like, this is important for the community. Can you please come up with a, direction forward? But I'll leave it to staff to assess what the right role is.
I apologize. I do remember reading the engineers are on work to rules, so that would delay it as well, but.
Yeah. My other question for Justine was, in regards to the OPP report. It was county data. What I'd really like to see is township data, in regards to that, and I'm not sure if that can be requested of the OPP. County data is great, but like for our community, what I find valuable would be, much more localized data, and my other request, and it isn't to this, but I think I personally found great success with the commercial truck vehicle inspection that they undertook in earlier this year. And again, it's not really for us to get involved in telling them how to do it, but I would just highly encourage continuation of those type of enforcements, specifically in the corridor of this township where there's just a whole lot of trucking going on. And I think anything that we can do to encourage more of that type of compliance and enforcement activity of the OPP in our community, it would be quite welcomed from my perspective. I'll leave it at that.
The only thing I had noted here was regarding the automatic speed enforcement that is being rolled out quite soon. And there was a note in there about staff will report to the roads committee at county at some point in terms of how those trials. And I just wanted to make a note that we could ask to have that committee agenda or presentation or whatever it is forward through our agenda via correspondence or whatever, just so that we can be also kept in notice as to how that's going.
Yeah, I believe it's going live mid-January. That'll be the 90-day posting period. And we've all seen the signs, right? I dare you to try to drive through Aberfoyle 59. Feel like I can get out and run faster. But
I'm sure the public will be curious too, like how.
Oh, no, I agree.
What is the result of that? So it would be good to just review.
No, I think it's fantastic. Maybe I drive too fast now, folks. I've been consciously trying to drive 59 for the implementation of the cameras so that I don't get tickets every week. And I'm like, wow, I'll just leave it at that. People are zipping by me and I'm just poking along. And I'm like, just wait, January 15th or 16th.
So 9 kilometers is the threshold.
I'm not saying what the threshold, what I will say to you is that I got a ticket in Durham. I mentioned this before in open session at 61 and a 50. So you do the math on it. I'm driving at 59. So. But yeah, I agree. Getting that feedback is great. They can just send it on our agenda.
Yeah, two comments. The first one deals with the question we asked, what additional enforcement is going to be happening as a result of two accidents on Brock Road. The response was, one was a fatality, and it didn't specifically address that question. So I guess the interpretation is this automatic speed enforcement is the sort of the fallback answer. So I'll leave it at that. But with respect to Mr. Kudo coming here, I would like him to be prepared to ask the question, what criteria will be used to determine whether the ASC will continue after 1 year in our community. Because we've got three things happening there. You got the school, you got the community center.
Yeah, and you know, I recognize they're calling it a 1 year pilot as well. That's a good question. I don't feel that the pilot is going to determine the specific sites. I think the pilot's gonna determine whether we stay in ASE, or not.
That's what I need to do is push for, or I should say, we should push for keeping the ASC in place.
My gut feeling is there is no desire at the county to cancel this program. It took us 6 years to get it started, but it's a fair question. You know what I mean? It's a fair
So
question,
I'll
but
ask that Mr. Kudo be advised that this, we'll be asking this question when he comes here in early 2025.
yeah, I think another fair question at some point would be that, I'll leave it that. I mean, what does the other enforcement look like now that these community safety zones are gonna be done by cameras? Can we expect additional enforcement by police cruisers on the secondary roads? And because now we've freed them up from, so that's kind of the angle I'm going at the county is now we're freeing up resources, but it's a difficult question to answer, but. Any questions, Councilor Bailey?
Not a question, just a comment. I really like this report. I feel like we go through a lot of meetings and we throw out all these different things, and it's great to just have this sort of report with a bit of closure on some of the items. So thanks to staff for doing that.
All right, so do we have a mover and a seconder? All right, all in favor, receive no. Thank you. 9.3.6. You missed my funds.
Yes. Through you, Mr. Chair, there's a few things here for council's consideration in terms of our human resource management policies. Two of the policies are annual policies that council sees and endorses on a yearly basis, and that's in line with obligations under the legislation. So that's the health and safety policy and the discrimination, harassment, and violence in the workplace policy. So there has been a number of changes to the discrimination, harassment, and violence in the workplace policy as recommended by both our insurer as well as our human resource and our solicitor as part of an audit that we had done. So those changes are presented in the attached policy for council. And in addition, we are bringing forward some changes to the performance appraisal policy just to align with some best practices and also just build out the criteria for both the benefit of the employee and as well as the manager, just making sure that there's consistency across the corporation and how those performance appraisals are being managed on a year-over-year basis. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'm gonna read the recommendation.
Sure. So that report ADM 2024-060 regarding the Township Human Resource Policy Review and proposed amendments be received. And the council approved the policies attached to this report as presented or amended. And the council directs staff to conduct employee engagement regarding the new policies and associated programs as outlined in the report.
Move for that, Councilor Goyna,
Sure.
Councilor Hurst. Questions, Councilor Hurst?
Just one of staff and maybe just a technical clarification. So, you know, for instance, when I'm reading the policy statement, 2024-001, the health and safety policy within the definitions, it had employee, meaning a township employee, a member of council, a member of a committee of council, local board, and a township volunteer. And it just occurred to me specifically within the health and safety, and we have legal obligations as an employee that are quite different from volunteers or council or members of committee. And I just wanted to make sure that like in my mind, there's a unique delineation there between an employee-employer obligation versus a volunteer on a committee. And had that been considered And moving forward, maybe there's an opportunity if that delineation it wants to be clearer around what that employer obligation is versus the volunteers or non-paid employees, if you will, or around what health and safety is. And it just occurred to me, it's like, that's a big chunk to call an employee when technically volunteers are employees. And then we get the complication of, say, firefighters and volunteers, and it just caught me as a cumbersome reference to employees, and I'll leave it at that. I don't need changes if you're comfortable with it, but as somebody that was reading through it with my lens, I just looked at it and said, that's a big bucket to just call employees. I'll leave it at that. If you're comfortable with it, I'm fine, but it was just something I wanted.
I'm good.
Yeah, I had some editorial comments on the human discrimination, harassment, violence policy. Staff has suggested wording. I assume they're going to be incorporated.
Yes.
The employee performance appraisal policy used the 4% merit increase. I'm wondering if it'd be more appropriate to tie it to the band. In other words, within instead of saying 4%, right now it's automatically each step in a band is 4%, rather than saying if you have 4% increase or 2%, you say you get the full band progression or you get half the band progression. Bearing in mind, the logic is that there have sometime in the future, you might be 3% bands for whatever reason, or 5% bands.
So through your,
Progressions, I should say.
yeah, so through Mr. Chair, I think we're, the way our max and min for each band is laid out, it is a 20% spread. So, and we are able to sort of divvy those up over 5 steps. And so right now with that spread and how it's being divided, the 4% seems like that's something that we can continue with. If there was if it ever changed that now the spread is looking like a different sort of percentage or.
Six steps or something that changed, that you're saying?
Yeah, I think it's more or less if it's no longer going to be 4%, I think, as opposed to thinking, what if that spread looks like something different? But the way we've divided it up over the steps per band, the 20% works out for each position.
Okay, I'm good if you're happy with that. Okay, the other question is, the fact that you got vacation time associated with merit increases. I asked the question, let's make sure it doesn't get carried over to subsequent years. And the response is, no, it will not be. So I wonder if you need to articulate that in the policy.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we can add a section around that merit increases, both financial as well as vacation, are not carried forward. They're used within that year, and then if you don't get full entitlement, it doesn't carry forward to give you the opportunity the following year. There's a maximum.
That's fine with the columns.
Just a question, in the resolution, it just says, staff to conduct employee engagement regarding the new policies. So what does the process look like from today, then getting employee feedback, and then is it gonna come back to us if there's any edits, or how's that gonna work?
So through you, Mr. Chair, the engagement is not necessarily to get their feedback on policy development.
Gotcha.
It's around training, coaching.
Okay.
Whatever that sort of, it's supposed to be not just a policy, it's supposed to be supplemented by a program. So we're wanting to have that continuous engagement with employees year over year.
Okay, so is engagement's the right word to be using then, or is it employee notification? Or
Well-
like, so you're gonna tell what the changes are, or you're actually
There's gonna be some
through training and,
coaching and training and
Okay,
that sort of thing.
so maybe engage, okay, I mistook that to be we're gonna ask for their feedback on policy.
Okay. All in favor? That's carried. Good job on all that. 9.4. Andrew with us?
No, he's covering inspections today, I believe.
Okay, do you want to just read the recommendation?
So that report, BLD 2024-004 entitled Building Department Third Quarter Update, July to September 2024 be received for information.
Okay, move for that, please. Councilor Hurst, Councilor Spose, any questions for Courtney?
No.
No. All in favor? That's carried. Next. Bylaw amendment, full application complete. That Lynn's here. All right, Lynn, whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. The purpose of this report is to deem the zoning bylaw amendment application complete for the property known municipally as 4120 Wellington Road 35. This application is a condition of consent approval, and all of the township staff, agencies, and our planning consultant is satisfied that the application can now be deemed complete. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Your recommendations, Mike?
Yes, that report PD 2024-007 entitled zoning bylaw amendment application D14 BRU. Request for council to deem the application incomplete or complete be received, and that council deem the application to be complete, and that staff be directed to proceed with notice in accordance with section 3 and section 5 of ORIG 54506 of the Planning Act as amended.
Okay, move for that, please. Councilor Hurst, Councilor Spose. Any questions on this one?
Nope.
Councilor Bailey?
Yeah, just a question, Lynn. I think I read in this one that the barn is due to be a controlled burn or something coming up. Is the barn in terrible condition that it needs to be destroyed, or is there opportunity for salvaging or, you know?
I don't know right offhand, but in seeing things like this in the past, it's a lot less expensive to do a controlled burn on a barn than to get a demolition permit and bring a crew in to bring the barn down. So that could be the purpose behind it, but they haven't
Okay.
clarified why they were doing a controlled burn.
Do we have, or does the township have any connection to folks that do take barns down and help salvage them in order to kind of offer an avenue for that? Or is that something you think folks might be interested in, in accessing? It just seems a shame to be burning a barn if it's in good, you know, good condition. And I know people that want to rebuild barns.
Yeah, I don't know if there are opportunities. However, I can look into that for you, and I can also reach out to their agent to see why they're looking at doing a controlled burn versus if the barn is stable enough to be removed, maybe by like a restoration company that collects lumber to do that. But I could certainly look into that for you.
Okay, and I don't want to put anything on the Heritage Committee, but this might be a topic of discussion. If all the barns in Puslinch are gonna be burned up, you know, we're gonna lose a little bit of our heritage, you know, with that. So it might be something to access or to give folks anyway a connection. Here's someone, if you're thinking of taking a barn down, here's someone to contact, or here's an avenue to help preserve these old barns.
It just, on Google Earth, it looks like a sizable barn.
Yeah, yeah. Just when I read that, I thought, oh, that's a shame that it's getting burned, but.
This consent, pretty sure I read, was put through under a surplus farm dwelling, is that correct? Lynn?
Yes.
Right, and so I would assume that county staff vetted that the land was being, you know, sold to a bona fide farmer in the area. It has to be joining another farm, is it not?
I'm not sure what the answer to that is. Maybe Ms. Hoyt Fox knows.
There's provincial legislation which allows you to sever off the house off of particular property, and the rest of the property can be rented out to farmers in the area. It doesn't have to be merged with anybody else. But typically what happens is somebody else uses it and they end up buying it, but I don't know what the situation is.
Yeah, I'm aware it doesn't always have to be a budding, but
they have to provide, you know, proof that it's a bona fide farming operation, whether they're down the road or maybe in, you know, they own property down the road. I'm just curious as to the other uses on this property, post.
And there's, if I'm, correct me if I'm misremembering this, Lynn, but there's a restriction that no further buildings will be built on this
That's part of-
separate property, correct?
part of
That's
the
correct.
farm-
Yes.
But it would allow you to dig a gravel pit. So I'm just curious to what the use of this property is going to be.
I see where you're going.
In the future, I'd like staff to, if we get farm surplus severances, I'd like staff to look into the possibility of getting a 1-foot reserve as part of a condition around the entire property that would be conveyed to the township. What would be the process for looking into that?
So I have started that review with our lawyer just to, see what options look like.
Okay, good. Because just worried. So, all right. This is, and if it's D14, has this file been active since? No, there's a schedule. of what they
D14 is just our, it's our
Per submission, oh, yes.
coding for files.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was there. I knew it was there. Okay, all right, all in favor? It's carried. Great. We're into item 10.1. And we don't need to read this recommendation. Maybe you could just highlight there was a change, I believe, because I was nervous.
So through Mr. Chair, we saw this ERO on our last agenda, and we deferred it just to get some more information specifically around the intent of allowing, soil reuse depots under ARA licenses, sites with ARA licenses. So I did speak with our lawyer as well as our soil consultant, who's really, he's really into the engagement around the excess soil regs with the province. And so we both agreed that there is a risk in the future, particularly with the way the regs are written around providing further clarification around the use of reuse soil depots in the ARA. That there could be a possibility to add that as an ancillary use in an ARA license in the future. Some of the positive things as there really is no opportunity for liquid soil depots in ARA, and anything with below the water table extraction is going to have much more stringent rules, which the majority of our pits are. But it certainly does look like there is some intent here to open up these types of properties for the better, greater reuse of excess soil, however they have their regulations worded. So we've added a section to the resolution just around that clarification needs to be provided, whatever they're intending to do there, before anything gets put into place.
Which section number did you add?
Yes. Here. So it is the fifth paragraph, the fifth whereas the proposed regulations do not provide sufficient clarity regarding whether the intent of the proposed regulations are to permit ARA licensed sites to be used as reuse sites for excess soil.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, all good. So you see your posting response, we need a mover and seconder for that. Mr. Harris, Councilor Spillis. Questions or comments? First.
Yeah, there's a question, staff. The legislation also will allow the township to regulate certain things happening on these properties. Can you just comment on that, and where are we in the process to look into that?
So through you, Mr. Chair, yes, there is opportunity for municipalities to continue to regulate and perhaps even further regulate or tighten up our regulations through our zoning bylaw. So there are opportunities for us to look at amendments to that, to address some of the concerns around ancillary uses like this. So it would require an amendment to the township's comprehensive zoning bylaw. There's a process that is set out under the act on how to do that. So at this point, staff are looking to add that to our corporate work plan for 2025, work with our planner and our solicitor on what those steps should be and what should be incorporated.
Thank you. Councilor Bailey?
Can we send this to Aldo and Sarah? And just highlight, or even a little summary that, paragraph 5 is concern township has on a planning perspective or through the area license. This was not dealt with at the last planning meeting for the county, so they won't have time to get the committee to endorse a comment, but maybe Aldo or Sarah would consider submitting comments around concerns. Jameson actually was looking at it, so between the three of those, please send that to me. Okay, all in favor? That's carried. 10.2. Just gonna read that recommendation.
So 10.2 is the County of Wellington adoption of their official plan amendment 123. And the recommendation is that it be received for information.
Okay, move that please. Commissioner Lewis, Commissioner Gordon, any questions or anyone but me? No? All right, all in favor? Carried. 10.3. Sorry if I say recommendation.
So we did receive a recommended resolution from Councilor Sepoulis through the questions and comment section. And then we also did manage to locate the Town of Caledon resolution regarding the same. So Mayor Sealy, if you'd like that put up on the screen.
Sure. I drafted something rough as well.
It is quite lengthy. Yes. So we'll have to do a little bit of scrolling here. And this is the Town of Caledon's resolution that I'll be sharing. There. No worry, no, make it bigger.
You don't have, you have Councilor Sepoulis?
Then we need council questions. We can read it or we can read it to ourselves, whatever you prefer.
Yeah, can we try and just. Scroll down.
Detail.
Still around. Just a bit. Right, so what are we looking for, a recommendation to
What we've done in the past where we've had these sort of sample resolutions is we've had council, pass a support resolution where we would tweak it to be for facetious purposes. Now, there's some really specific things in here to Caledon, so I'm not sure if council wants to strike out some of this.
No, I want to go through it all. I'm comfortable supporting it as it's penned. But I think council.
We could incorporate some of council's.
Well, I would suggest that we put mine up, and what we could do is include our support for Caledon's resolutions as number one, and then carry on with some of the points I made on number two.
Really,
I'll just send you mine.
No, it isn't. See, just having. See?
It just,
Did you send them?
just now.
Okay.
Sorry, should have done it. Mine isn't as eloquent. It's point four.
Okay, so I'll just.
Well, have you seen John?
Well, yeah, I must have read it last night because I don't remember reading it. So I'm just reading it now.
See if we can get behind John's.
Right.
Well, my focus has been on the fact that, they're prioritizing certain highway projects, which according to the NTO evidence-based evaluation is known as figure blah blah, release report, are lower in the priority list. In other words, the 413 is lower than our project. And, the St. Catherine's, I don't know, wasn't even listed on that. And then they go ahead and they're saying if, you're a municipality, a property owner municipality, if you got any costs, we may or may not pay you. Depending on how we feel, I guess. So basically, my resolution is that we ask, that keep going down. But the township, parliamentary use fact-based evaluation for prioritized highway projects. And the province amend the proposed legislation encompasses municipalities for all reasonable costs that may incur for supporting priority projects.
And you said we can add support for the Calvin.
Yeah, I read
resolutions?
the top, yeah, I would support that, yeah, and, where, we could say whereas, the township is to receive Calvin motion, of November 14th. November 14th.
What are your thoughts, Sarah? Do you wanna hash yours out as well, or does this cover enough?
No, mine was a little more different focus. It was more on impacts to kind of environment and people. It supports that, said, whereas the township Portsmouth recognizes the need to build priority highways faster, blah, blah, blah. However, we're concerned that local bylaws such as environmental bylaws could be overridden. Appeals to the federal government for impact studies. So there's a whole bunch of points
So
after that.
let's deal with this one, then we'll just, maybe we can just deal with.
Oh, no, I would just leave, the and supports down and, just leave that there, just whereas and take out and supports from there.
You don't wanna include that we support
No,
it?
we put it down below,
Okay.
on the be resolved.
Sorry, is it covered?
No, go down below where it says be resolved, okay, then make the first bullet that the township of Portsmouth supports the, new one. The township of Portsmouth supports the, town of Caledon resolution or a resolution with respect to this proposed legislation. Yeah, sorry.
So 212.
212, yeah.
And so we covered all
And then if you pull it off mine, I can just.
Okay.
Some of the comments on mine
Yeah, about the environmental stuff.
were from. So there.
Pull this over so I don't mess it up.
The town of Caledon is outright opposing this legislation. And we're kind of counter.
Well, no, no, they were just worried about how it was being done. The counselor that put forward that motion wanted to make it clear he wasn't saying no.
But
Yeah, no to the highway, which is how,
It said right in
It's just how they're doing it.
how they're going
how
about
they're
doing
doing
it.
it. Sure, it's how they're doing it.
And how the residents would be treated and how the environment would be not considered and. So I took the first two paragraphs are right out of the ERO. And then I omitted why the 413 would be awesome.
so could we add basically the whole part under, whereas.
Those are all bullets.
Yeah, the however, the township was just considering and then local bylaw, all that.
And I think we
I
should
don't think
say
that's touched on in
concern
any
that
attitude.
Bill 212. Then this is not worded well, but.
Okay. You could, like, staff could sort of consolidate this if council's comfortable.
Sure.
Just consolidating this into the existing motion that we have.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, you can put that all as whereas this is
Yeah.
happening and then it
Yeah.
resolved, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I should have sent it in ahead of time. Didn't think you wanted. Another email at 11:30.
We can do, we can make it into sort of one,
Yeah.
one sort of refined resolution and send it and attach Caledon's resolution to it.
Yeah.
And then we have the list, have it finished up, who we'll send it to, and we'll make sure it goes to county planning staff. Or no, that was the first one. Yeah.
Because this is due tonight by midnight.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, our municipalities have a little bit of bigger window.
Yeah, okay. We will, we'll get that in on time.
Get in your own personal comments though by
No, you
midnight.
do anything.
Next
We
week.
join in the
Your
Euro
own
comments.
submissions.
We just need, I think, a mover and seconder. So it's fine.
Counselor Spoulos, Counselor Hurst. Favor, carried.
Good job. That was good.
I move to move motion up.
Yes,
I'll second it for you.
Okay.
just want to move to notice of motion, because.
Yep.
Counselor Claire has to have it. So she's moving to move.
Advance.
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 Item 16 to right now, Counselor Bailey has seconded that, all in favor, carried. All right, Counselor Spoulos, go ahead. What's your motion? I think.
My motion, was deferred until we heard back from the, MOECD and MPO. I was wondering if our staff can give us an update on that.
You, Mr. Chair, we have not heard back from either agency at this point.
And they asked for 2 weeks and that 2 weeks has expired.
MECP has had 3 weeks. MTO has had about 2 weeks.
So I'd like to suggest that we, put this, support this motion. Basically, the motion deals with the issue that happened on the, Highway 6. And, basically it's asking that the Ontario policeman, investigate the matter in order to identify the action that the local staff at MECP, FPL, Ministry of Health and Source Water Protection should have undertaken in this matter, identify what changes could be made to legislation regulations to ensure that appropriate action is taken by responsible provincial agencies when the private well users have identified contamination of their well water or external sources beyond their control, and identify any follow-up that the township affected residents could take. Well, basically, it's, that's the action I, would like, trust the council support.
It's moved, and a seconder, Councilor Hurst. Okay, comments, Councilor Hurst?
Nope, I think it's well done.
Okay, Councilor, go ahead.
Yeah, that's very well done. It's disappointing that we haven't heard anything back. I think this is the responsible thing to do for our residents.
Councilor Bailey?
Yeah, well, disappointing that we haven't heard back. I do worry we're trying to do some work with MTO coming up and, you know, through Morston and trying to get some data for a light, you know, it'd be nice to have a good working relationship since we're trying to work together. I hope this doesn't, you know, keep that relationship, but I support where this is going for sure.
For sure. Yeah. Good. Great. Back to council reports, mayor updates. Same class, that's could be in this case. Mayor updates. Had a TAML meeting. When do we have that? Yesterday, Monday?
Yeah.
Very well. I believe we'll see the newsletter and the correspondence to the ministers on our next agenda.
Yes.
Okay, so still just plugging forward and growling cages and is there anything else to talk about? I am running for chair of planning again. That is, the election for that is number 6 of the warden's inauguration. So I'll know that. As well as, there will be a new warden because the current sitting warden is not running again. So I'm hoping to get that position again, but, time will tell. Oh, there's lots going on in the county. The city of Guelph did their, study on ideal locations for ambulance stations, and they're recommending building 8 stations in 8 years. There's also a report about response times and different options for Whistlish. Maybe staff could find that report and have it on our next meeting. It would be at the Joint Social Services Committee, and it would have went a week or 2 ago. I can get you that date. Because there's response times across the county and they're not even, and I think we should weigh in on what we would want as response times for ambulance. And some, I believe one of the recommendations is just having an ambulance at Clare Road or building a small satellite station in Whistlish to serve our residents. There's also different response time benchmarks. I believe ours are higher, even though we're closer to the city versus up in Mapleton. I'm gonna be pushing benchmark that's consistent across the county. I don't think there should be different response time targets for different residents of the same county. That's just my perspective, but let's get that report. Get it here, we'll weigh in on it, because the county is going to be making some decisions in the very near future about the build of these new ambulance stations. That can affect us. ASC we know about is coming. That's mostly it. County projected tax increase is 4.1%. Believe staff are going to be able to incorporate that preliminarily into our budget discussions for next meeting. Is that correct?
Yes.
For a second. See that. Councilor Bailey, Ms. Willis, all in favor? Bylaws and sway funds.
The following ballot be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Ballot 2024-069 being a ballot authorized an official seal for the corporation and tax rules.
Mover please, Counselor Hurst, Counselor Good, all in favor? Carried, all you have. Announcements, anyone? Come on, somebody say it.
I'll jump in really quickly. Township staff, all the Heritage Open House, the 3 weeks ago. I think that the tone that staff have taken over the last 3 years of going through this process has improved significantly in terms of the warmth and just helping residents understand the process of designating a property. The, participation wasn't overwhelming at the open house, but I think it's important that as a municipality, we continue to do those type of things to provide residents the opportunity. Kudos to staff.
Good job.
Sorry, just coming to town.
That's it. That's Sunday, Santa Claus parade, Sunday.
Food bank.
Yeah, bring food bank donation. So, get hockey. So,
hockey.
2 hockey tournaments. 2 hockey tournaments. We're gonna make it back somehow. Any other announcements?
Today, here's something that student, the youth group in the community helping out. Sorry, I can't remember. Oh, what about the firefighter fill a truck event? It's coming up.
Details coming out.
The date. Shoot.
Oh, I saw something.
Sorry.
You know what, just-
It's on December 7th. And we've been 11 to 2.
Yeah, 10 to 2 or 11 to 2. Swing by the fire hall, give them, donate, fill a truck.
We're pushing on our socials and all that good stuff. Obviously,
Yeah.
doesn't need to be stated, but I figured. Okay. Close is done. Any business arising from a closed session? No. Any new business?
The following ballot is taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Ballot 2024-070 being a ballot concern for being council for the corporation of the township of Cliff and it's being held on the 20th day of November 2024.
Please, Councilor Hurst, Councilor Lewis, all in favor? And adjournment.
Council hereby adjourns at 4:14 p.m.
Move it, please. Councilor Lewis, Councilor Hurst. I'm not gonna say all in favor until 4:15. 4:15, all right, all in favor? Carried. Safe drive.
Thank
Councilor
you,
Lewis.
guys.